6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you tonight, it's me, Ian.
Matt. And Joa.
And of course, you can bring up anything that happens to be on your mind. That's the point of the program here. Coming up, Seattle Police Department may be firing upwards of like a third of its officers.
Why?
Yeah, we'll talk about why. It's unvaccinated officers that are facing the axe. We'll tell you about that. Plus, Chicago also may be having a bit of a conflict between the mayor's office and the police there as well. So we can discuss all those things. Plus, Hillary Clinton has been called a war criminal in the streets. You've got some audio for that, Joa, that you wanted to share. But first, the Jay Stark story. I didn't know who this was until all of a sudden his news about his demise was all over social media late last week. I think it was mid to late last week. I think it must have been after Thursday that this happened, because we certainly would have talked about it last Thursday with you on the show, Matt.
Yeah, right. I think it was, let's see if it even says I didn't even pay attention to when it was, to be honest with you, but I think it was Monday.
Oh, this Monday. Okay.
Yeah, I think it just happened Monday. But I could be wrong there.
This guy dresses in all black. Mm-hmm. He's got like a black balaclava on with, I don't even think with any eye holes, or he's got goggles over top of it or something like that. You cannot see anything about his face. And from what I understand, he made a name for himself by coming out with 3D printable gun plans.
Most importantly, he designed the first semi-automatic 3D printable gun.
Okay.
And he was generally a gun... First things first, the most important component of Jay Stark is that he's a German. He's not an American.
That's not exactly a very gun-friendly country, right?
No, I'm not sure exactly how it works in Germany, but I know that there are some rules about how many you're allowed to have. So that's why SIG has a drop-in cassette that's serialized, so you can take the cassette out of your gun and put it into a different frame and make a different gun. So SIG has made it possible for German people to own several guns and have just one on the books. This guy, Jay Stark.
And I presume that's with some sort of permit from the German government,
yes,
right?
They know what's up. So they'll sell them, one gun, and then if the person wants to buy an extra slide, an extra barrel, an extra frame, they can do it. Push a couple of pins out, take the cassette in, drop it into the new frame, put the pins back in, put the new barrel and slide on, and you've got a totally different length gun. So it's actually a pretty cool design. I'm glad that SIG as a company, just a side note, SIG as a company has done a very good job at defying the government and finding ways around them and literally throwing things at their faces.
Don't they manufacture in New Hampshire?
They do.
SIG?
Exeter, yep. And there's a ton of Free Staters who work there too.
Interesting.
So they're the inventors of the arm brace. They invented the brace to get around the short barrel rifle, registration baloney. So, but this guy in particular, he was basically an extremely hardcore libertarian dude, spoke perfect English with only a slight German accent, and lived in Germany, born and raised. And apparently the English government back in December alerted the German officials that there was basically a gun terrorist living in their midst. And an investigation was started. They raided his house last week.
Shoot.
That was in Germany. It was in Germany, yeah. They raided the German FBI essentially raided his house last week, found nothing illegal whatsoever. And 2 days later, he was found dead in front of his parents' house in his car.
By what means?
Well, the authorities say there's no foul play going on, and everything's, it wasn't a murder and it wasn't a suicide. That much we can be assured of. But
and how old was this guy?
28.
Well, it probably wasn't a heart attack.
He was a very, very fit. He was. Did
he get vaccinated?
I have no idea. I doubt it. This guy's like I said, he's a legit libertarian. When you listen to him talk, he loves to say, "Live free or die." Yeah, live free or die. Live free or die. He says it all the time. He clearly watches New Hampshire. He's familiar with New Hampshire if he's saying that.
So how many years has his gun model been around? This 3D printed semi-auto.
I don't know, the semi-auto.
We're talking about a rifle, not a handgun.
It's like a small carbine.
Okay.
So not quite a rifle, not quite a handgun. It's a pistol caliber.
What's it called? What's the name of it?
The FGC-9.
FGC-9.
Yep.
Okay.
The FGC-9 is what it's called.
And you said how many years?
Probably since 2015 or 16.
So this must have been relatively soon after the Liberator, right? So for listeners, the history of 3D printed guns, the first one was called the Liberator, and it was this shoddy, literally, you could maybe shoot one shot out of it before it became entirely
unsafe.
Highly dangerous kind of thing that could blow up in your hands. But it was a proof of concept that you could do this with a 3D printer, and it was named after the
original Liberator.
The really crappy Liberator that was dropped on France, I think, during World War II, was it?
They were dropping like these semi-automatic little pistols that held, I think, 6 rounds of 45 ACP.
Were they? I thought they were one-shotters.
No, they had a 6-round mag in them, and I think that the only purpose for those Liberators was to kill a Nazi and take his better gun.
Right.
The Liberator that Cody Wilson designed, I won't say it was for the exact same purpose because, of course, no Nazis are alive and well today in America. But if you ever had to kill a very bad person with a good gun and take their gun to protect yourself with, then that's what the Liberator would be good for. Yeah.
Was Cody Wilson the designer of that?
Cody Wilson designed the Liberator.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew he was the guy behind the Ghost Gunner, which is a kind of...
That came long after.
Help tool your own guns at home, finish your 80% lowers kind of machining device.
That was amazing. That was a few years after the Liberator came out.
Okay.
And at that point, he kind of... People will argue that this guy, Jay Stark, was actually the founder of 3D printed guns. So there's, but they definitely spoke across the water to each other on, regular basis. And
this guy took it to the next level. I mean,
he turned it into a semi-automatic.
Right.
Like a semi-auto is that's an interesting advancement in plastic.
Well, yeah, and presumably you could use it for more than one shot, unlike the Liberator, which was not very useful at all.
And this guy, his way of doing things wasn't just reliant. The Liberator that Cody Wilson made, you can print the entire thing. You can print the entire gun.
I believe with the exception of one screw, right? Didn't you need to have one?
No, you need a nail.
Screw? Nail, okay.
You need a roofing nail to act as a firing pin.
Got it.
You can't have plastic hit a brass primer and expect it to dent it. You just need a roofing nail or a finishing nail or whatever, and that would act as a firing pin. So that and this guy though took it to the next level and actually made a very viable design. And he wasn't just doing 3D printing though; he was making guns that you could go to the hardware store, you go to Home Depot and pick up the rest of what you need, and you could make a very serviceable semi-automatic weapon.
Have you ever shot one? Is that illegal to answer that question? You don't have to answer that question.
I've been in the presence of a multitude of 3D printed weapons.
It's not illegal.
It's not illegal, right?
No. Having
in the U.S. We're not giving legal advice. We're not lawyers, but you would never want to
have an off-the-books short-barreled weapon or machine gun.
Is that what the FGC-9 is considered?
It was a semi. It would be a short barrel rifle in the United States. Yeah, and he definitely had a homemade suppressor on it too. I don't know what their rules are about suppressors over there.
So the FGC-9 in the United States is considered short barrel and therefore illegal?
Definitely. You could build it with an arm brace. Well, like I said earlier, with a SIG arm brace, you could plop one of those on it, and it would skirt that law.
I see. In fact, the photos I'm seeing of these here are with the arm brace.
Are they?
Would appear to have an arm brace attached to them, so that would.
So that's what people are building.
What would that? Adding the arm brace to it would make it considered what?
A pistol.
Okay.
That would be legally a pistol if it's under a certain length.
You got to know what you're doing. These guys.
It's a minefield.
Yeah.
The federal government has said, the ATF has set up a legal minefield for you to navigate in order to exercise your rights. Period. They're bad people. There's nothing good about them.
It's such a joke. And the fact that you can just go to Home Depot and make a gun.
Yeah, guns aren't rocket science. You can go to Home Depot and make lots of cool stuff.
You can spend about $24 on supplies and then get a $200 Walmart gift card at the gun buybacks.
They sell FYI, they also sell fertilizer at Home Depot.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Not me either. I kind of wish I did. It's pretty cool, but I know people don't do that stuff.
You want to weigh in on 3D printed guns? Jay Stark turns up dead, one of the key inventors behind this technology. You got any opinion you want to share? Feel free to join us at 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com.
It's Bitcoin.com. Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
If you're looking for work, you know what I mean by elevator speech. It's the short version, saying just enough to make the listener want to listen more. Even if you're not a job seeker, effective communication skills have never been more important, with money and attention so scarce now. So to cut through the clutter, choose every single word as though it was the last word the person you're speaking to will hear. Otherwise, it might be. Instead of saying, due to the fact that, say, because, and avoid mispronunciations. Say jewelry, not jewelry, which could offend. Undoubtedly, you don't want to say undoubtedly. And whatever you do, never use a preposition to end a sentence with. Just kidding. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever you want. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Talking about 3D printed guns, and one of the creators of arguably one of the most important ones out there, apparently, the FGC-9, has been found dead after, well, just so coincidentally happened right after the federal government in Germany raided his house like a couple weeks ago. A few days later, they found him dead in his car.
Yeah, the raid was October 6th. On October 8th, he was found dead in his car sitting in front of his parents' house. And of a heart attack.
Oh, and they are claiming it was a heart attack?
It was a heart attack.
And he's 28 years old.
28 years old, fit as a fiddle. The guy was always in the woods running around doing gun stuff.
Probably a directed energy weapon or something.
Could be, yeah. Could be.
It's creepy stuff. I was just looking at this FGC-9. It's an amazing little device. The Wikipedia page claims it was released only in 2020.
2020?
It was fairly recent.
I think that's Mark II. That the versions of that have been around for a few years.
Interesting. Well, it says designed 2018 to 2020, produced 2019 to present. So there was nothing prior to this? It was the Liberator that was the only one?
No, there have been people have been designing 3D printed guns.
But this was the first semi-auto?
Functioning, this is a functional kind of thing. People made Gatling guns and things like that before, but it's not, a nice, tidy little package carbine type of MP5 competitor type thing.
Now, I presume, I don't know a lot about 3D printing. I presume the tech has gotten a lot better over the years, right? Because wasn't the Liberator like circa 2013 or 2014 or something like that?
13, because I printed my Liberator in 13, I think.
Now,
sounds about right.
I presume it's legal to have a Liberator, but just not an FGC9 without the...
Well, you just want to be careful about your barrel length and things like that.
Gotcha. And again, we can't give legal advice, but this is just your understanding that as somebody who's done some personal research and your thoughts. So the tech's gotten better. I mean, is it that now you can print stronger plastic than you could a decade ago?
The plastic is basically the same as it has ever been. They are coming up. They're engineers, and they're looking for structural, strength and things. So the way it gets printed, if you print from top to bottom in one direction, it won't be as strong as if you print it top to bottom in a different direction. So if you print the barrel from the breech to the muzzle, it may be stronger than it would if you laid the barrel on its side and printed from the bottom half of the barrel to the top half of the barrel. It would blow apart that way. But so they're always futzing and fiddling. They're designers and they're engineers, and they're trying to
find the best.
And we're trying to contain 50,000 pounds per square inch in a
explosions.
Explosions in a piece of plastic. So
it sounds amazing that it can even be done at all.
Yeah.
Let alone done multiple times.
It's gobsmacking.
Yeah.
Really, that it can be done.
And the governments of the world hate this.
They hate it. And because the beautiful thing of it, like Bitcoin, like cryptocurrency, they're files.
Yes, this is information.
It's information. It's speech. It's literally speech. So, you'll see the if you're familiar with the come and take it cannon, the Texas come and take it cannon motif. They have one just the same for this, and it's just got a picture of a file, like a manila folder on it. Come and take it. So
I've seen it with the Liberator, the old blocky Liberator gun too.
Yeah.
Well, because that ultimately, I mean, in the United States, there's supposed to be freedom of speech. And so passing around these files is an act of freedom of speech.
Pure and simple.
Whether you manufacture it or not and actually make a gun, then you might be crossing into some illegal thresholds within the United States. But just sharing a file, I mean, that's protected speech.
Absolutely.
Clearly. And I remember that Cody Wilson was gone after by the federal government, he was also gone after by the Texas government. That's a whole other story. But the federal government went after Defense Distributed, which was his company. Cody Wilson, the creator of the Liberator, the creator of the Ghost Gunner. They targeted him and said, you have to take those files down from your website because somebody in another country could access them.
Sure.
And they had some sort of obscure...
Good.
Well,
Let's spread some knowledge.
That was his intention, obviously, but he did end up taking the files down while the case went on, and I'll have to research it and see what happened. I remember it's something...
They ended up putting them back up.
They did put it back up, okay, because their argument was there was some sort of international regulation that the U.S. government had that said you couldn't share weapons or something. You couldn't...
Yes, yeah. It's like an international arms trade, like treaty ban type thing.
So that was their argument was, you're essentially arming our enemies by giving this information out over the internet, and that's what the whole court case was predicated upon. And you're saying that Defense Distributed won that case, and they're now able to distribute it outside of the U.S.?
I don't know how it all happened, but I know they put them back up.
All right, well, that's good to know. I didn't know if they would they only put them up to where it's geographically restricted to
I don't know. That's a good question.
We should freshen up on that particular case because it's an interesting little aspect to this whole thing. But to just kind of bring our listeners up to speed, again, this Jay Stark guy from Germany, young guy, found dead after the German government decided to raid his house like 2 weeks ago, a week ago.
Yep. It was October 6th. He was found dead in front of his parents' house on October 8th.
Is there anything else we need to know about this story?
Yeah. Well, I think the same rule that applies to this applies to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency applies to this. Mm-hmm. To liberty-loving people, if you take notice, and I hope you all have by now, that the government is either petrified by something or hates it. This isn't the drug war. The government isn't afraid of drugs. The government loves the drug war. It feeds them. This is cryptocurrency and 3D printed guns. They are absolutely petrified of, and it has nothing to do with public safety. It has everything to do with them maintaining a stranglehold on their power over you. Well, so if you see one person that's getting taken down, that's your cue to do it too. Where they take one out, produce another 10,000. When they take one of those out, produce another 20,000. Amplify.
Well, one of the things we did when we got the word about Cody Wilson's takedown was we went out and found the files on a torrent site and started to seed. We downloaded the torrent and started seeding it. Because, again, to me, it's an act of freedom of speech, and it's quite clear.
Yeah, the 3D printed, it makes it really easy, but in reality, like, anyone can just make a gun out of anything. So why are they freaking out about this? I don't know.
Well, because it makes it more professional. I mean, you can go down to Home Depot, get some PVC pipes, and make a potato launcher or whatever.
You can make a gun. You can make a 12-gauge shotgun with stuff you get at Home Depot.
But is it going to look as nice? Is it going to be as slick? Is it going to be as effective?
Right.
I mean, having custom-made
pieces. It'll be
effective. Maybe, yeah. But having custom-made pieces, custom-printed pieces, I think is probably going to be more likely to be more of a long-term solution.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, the governments of the world, including the United States, they want serial numbers. They want to have total control, like you were saying about Bitcoin. They like to control the Bitcoin exchanges. They focus on the centralized points. Yep. That's where they put their pressure. And the same thing's true of the gun world. They put their pressure on the gun manufacturers, and they say, you got to follow all these rules. Well, when you can print your own gun at home,
all that is moot.
The rules are over.
Yep.
As long as they don't know about it.
Decentralization is the death knell of centralization. It's the antibiotic for that disease.
Yeah, and these guys are going to get violent in order to protect their monopoly.
They're afraid and they're lashing out.
Right, in order to protect their control. So if you want to weigh in, you're welcome to. The number here is 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration Advisory Panel has voted to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as for younger adults who are at high risk of severe illness. FSN's Carolyn Malone reports.
An FDA panel approved the Moderna request for a half-dose COVID booster to give people aged 65 and over and younger at-risk adults. Studies have shown the Moderna third dose would restore antibodies that drop off 6 months after the initial vaccines. Pfizer vaccine boosters are already approved for some people. First-dose vaccination rates have risen by more than 20% recently as a number of institutions, businesses and some states introduce vaccine mandates, even though federal rules to put mandates into effect are still being formalized. The White House COVID response coordinator said 77% of eligible Americans have now had at least one vaccine dose.
The U.S. has been re-elected to the UN Human Rights Council. The country quit the organization in 2018 under former President Donald Trump. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
In a mostly ceremonial vote at the UN General Assembly, the US was elected alongside 17 other countries to join the Human Rights Council for the next 3 years. 168 of the 193 member states cast their vote in favour of the US. The council is tasked with protecting human rights and responding to violations across the world. Donald Trump quit the body 3 years ago, accusing it of hypocrisy for its criticism of Israel. President Joe Biden made rejoining the council one of his priorities. The US will begin its new term in January.
Norwegian officials say the bow and arrow attack that killed 5 people in the town of Kongsberg appears to be an act of terrorism. They said the 37-year-old Danish-born suspect is a convert to Islam and may have been radicalized. He's due to appear in court on Friday. The Texas House of Representatives has passed a proposed redistricting map that would reinforce Republican dominance in elections for the next decade. Critics say the new boundaries slash the voting power of people of color, despite them fueling the state's population growth over the past decade. FSN's Tony Waterman has more from Austin.
Under the new map, districts with majority white voters would jump from 83 to 89, while the number of Hispanic majority districts would drop by 3, and black communities would lose 1 district. Texas was the only state in the U.S. to pick up 2 additional congressional seats after the last census, with people of color driving 95% of the state's growth. The way the map is gerrymandered makes it very likely that the state will send 2 more Republicans to Washington next year, influencing policy in an increasingly partisan country, potentially for the next decade.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up here, police departments in major cities may be getting huge cuts, meaning the Seattle Police Department looking at cutting approximately a third of its force, meaning firing a third of its police force. We'll tell you about that on the way here. With you tonight, by the way, it's Ian,
Matt,
and Joa.
And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you want to learn about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, get on over to Bitcoin.com. Click Get Started right there at the top of the page, and that'll take you to some introductory videos. You can watch just one of them. If you've only got less than 5 minutes to do this, you can do that because the first video, I think, is about 3 minutes long. And that'll give you the basics on what makes cryptocurrency interesting, special, unique, and why it's been such a world-changing financial technology. You can go to Bitcoin.com and, again, click Get Started at the top of the page. And if you want to watch more than just that first video, obviously, you can dig as deep into the topic as you like. And also, news headlines are available and in-depth news coverage over at news.bitcoin.com. So if you're not new to crypto and you want to get the latest information about the world of crypto, go to news.bitcoin.com. We're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts, whether you want to discuss the 3D printed gun controversy out there with a very popular creator of one of the world's most, I guess, relevant 3D printed firearms, Jay Stark, turning up dead mysteriously 2 days after the German government raided his home. You can weigh in on that or whatever's on your mind. We got Dave Ridley calling from New Hampshire. You're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Dave.
Pittsfield, New Hampshire resident, is fighting back against the man, although he's kind of using the man to do it. But his name is Joseph McCoy, and he's filed a First Amendment lawsuit against the town of Pittsfield because they ordered him to remove his storage trailer that had the word Trump USA on it. Not what I would put on it, but free speech is supposed to be for, your ability to say bad things as well as good things. And so they argue that, well, the zoning laws say you're not allowed to have a trailer on your house for, on your property for such a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's taken it to federal court and looks like he's lost. The U.S. District Court Judge Joseph LaPlante, it says, filed a decision that the town can order him to remove the trailer.
Yeah, basically this judge, by the way, the same judge is going to be hearing the Crypto 6 case. This particular judge, Joseph LaPlante, who, to his credit, has seemed relatively decent, all things considered, in the Crypto 6 hearings so far.
Let's not give him too much credit yet.
Yeah, in this case, he's obviously wrong, and he's ordering that the man, in this case, Pittsfield resident Joseph McCoy, has to remove the trailer from his property because the town argued it didn't apply its zoning ordinance in an unconstitutionally vague manner and didn't violate the man's First Amendment rights, according to the judge's order. So the judge is basically saying town zoning ordinances are more important than freedom of expression.
Should be a nice big First Amendment rally there before they tear that out.
It's a fine idea. Isn't Pittsfield like way up north, though?
I don't know. I think that's Pittsburgh.
Okay, maybe you're right about that. But so what do you think, Dave? I mean, what's going to happen here? Dave, did we lose you? Dave Ridley going once, Dave going twice. Well, according to the story at the Union Leader, this was published just a few days ago, McCoy's attorney, Robert Foho, calls the decision grossly incorrect and fails to follow applicable law. And he does say that he's going to ask the judge to reconsider, which never works. I mean, if you've ever filed a motion to reconsider, I've never heard of a motion to reconsider actually getting a judge to say, "Oh yeah, you know what? What was I thinking?
I made a boo-boo."
Wait, that? Yeah, right.
The infallible priests of this religion don't make mistakes.
Yeah, and then Foho does say he intends to file an appeal. So this may go up to an appeals court level. I certainly hope that he does, because Foho also happens to be the very same attorney who had the mask case where Aria, me, and the lady that owns the local pho noodle place here in town called Pho Keen Great, we all had filed in federal court to challenge the governor of New Hampshire and the city of Keene's mask mandates. That, by the way, that case got kicked out of court back in August. And Foho, we asked him, hey, man, do you want to appeal this? Because we paid him. He wasn't just doing this out of the kindness of his heart. We paid him thousands of dollars to take this thing not through trial, but only just to the point of getting an injunction. So the intention was to get an injunction from a judge, like an initial injunction saying, all right, we're going to smack down these mask mandates while we hear this case. Well, the case never even got to the injunction, never even got to a hearing, because the federal judge kicked it out of court. And Foho, basically his response, it took him days and days and days to finally get back to us. And his response was, well, he was thinking about not filing the appeal and that he was going to call us later that day and let us know why not. He never called. And then 2 days later, the appeal 30-day deadline ran out. So the time ran out, and the same guy never actually filed the appeal. So, I hope that his other client here, Jim Allard from Pittsfield, has better luck with Foho. I mean, he seemed like a smart guy as far as attorneys go, but he also wasn't particularly responsive.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't get back to us when we emailed him frequently, or he would say he'd write back and say he would get back to us, but then never did. And it's like, you shouldn't have to keep rattling the cage of somebody that you're paying.
Yeah, but they all work together. They're all homies at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, that's that. Well, there's an interesting theory about that, but
the attorneys in Manchester are in violation in responding to my settlement asking, or it's going to be a lawsuit.
The city attorneys, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, they're in violation right now. Which is it's always expected.
Hold on, let me clarify what you're saying here. You have a suit against the city of Manchester for an illegal arrest of you earlier this year, where they manhandled you as well as Skyler, the 603 Truth guy.
I don't know what his case is going on with.
Right.
I don't know what's going on
with your attorneys are just for you, not for him. But that for listeners that might have been familiar with this arrest, it was you were outside of it was like a hotel. You were doing some cop block kind of stuff out there. And the cops took you and this other guy down. They took him down with a taser. You got arrested, and you're saying this was an illegal arrest. And
they dropped the charges. Yeah, for me.
So you found some attorneys that were willing to take the case. And now you're saying they're in default, or what's going on with?
So they have a certain amount of time to respond. Then I allowed an extension because there was family matters. I took the benefit of the doubt on that stuff, and then now they were supposed to return a response. They haven't, and they're well within violation.
And so this response is they're supposed to come back and agree to a proposed settlement, right?
Or even just respond,
But you guys would like a settlement. You'd rather not go to court over this.
Oh, no,
presumably.
yeah.
And you were telling me off the air on a previous day that you expected them to settle.
Oh, yeah.
So they're just like not doing anything, is what you're saying.
Well,
just
I had to give them more time, that's for sure. But
Okay.
you never have them on time for anything. Like public records requests, they always
Oh, they
beyond
drag
30
their feet
days.
as much as they can.
Oh, yeah. They try to pull every trick out of the bag, you know?
Well, because there's no punishment for them. I mean, if they don't, if they go beyond the the minimum or the maximum 30, is it 30 days, 90 days? What is it?
30 days.
30 days. Then you can't like charge them with something. There's no punishment for that. It's just bad.
There's like violations, and if it's like a repeat offense or it's like unreasonable, then yeah, you could actually get paid for that in a lawsuit. So like
but they won't face any punishment, is what I'm saying. Like the bureaucrats at the bureaucracy who are dragging their feet and trying to prevent you from getting information, you may be able to sue and get some sort of monetary settlement from the government bureaucracy, but those individuals will not. They're not going to jail. They're not going to have to actually pay that.
No, they're not going to go to jail.
They're not going to pay that out of their own paychecks. They're not going to get their pay docked over this.
City employees, they embezzle money all the time. They don't go to jail.
603-283-6160. That's because it's good to be in the gang.
Yep.
Good to be in the club. All right, 603-283-6160. Your thoughts on the guy with the Trump trailer? He's being told that zoning ordinances are more important than his freedom of speech, according to a federal court that kicked his case out with a summary judgment. There's more coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
The GoPro camera that's costs $300 is better than a Taser-made camera.
Yeah, so there are other competitors in the marketplace, and they weren't given a chance to even bid on that. I mean, that's good old boy cronyism, isn't it? You support that?
Are you opposed to free enterprise?
I am for free enterprise. I am against no-bid contracts. You see, free marketplaces have competition so that we find out if products are superior or not. In an area where you have no-bid contracts, you'll never find out what's better. You said that there was no coercion here.
Making the purchase can make that decision for themselves.
No, they cannot, because they're taking my tax money at the threat of my home. You said there was no coercion, and I will remind you that they will kick me and my family out on the street if I don't pay property taxes. To suggest that this money belongs to the police chief is just the kind of boot-licking that takes this country into fascism.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. Coming up, Police Department of Seattle and Chicago may see some mass firings coming soon as a lot of police officers, turns out they actually care about bodily freedom when it comes to their own bodies.
Their own bodies.
They don't want to put a vaccine in their body, and I support their right not to.
I'm really not sure how I feel about this whole thing. I'm really torn on.
Well, we'll get into it. We'll talk about that coming up.
Which way am I supposed to let my hate flow?
Hate only hurts the hater.
I know.
But I do want to let you know also about Intercoin. It is an interesting website. You can go to intercoin.org. It's an organization that actually allows you as a business or your organization to launch your own currency or raise money using your own token. And they've now launched worldwide. So if there's a token you want to launch or an app that you want to build, you can go to intercoin.org, enter your email, and the team there will get in touch and learn about your needs. And while you're there, if you want, you can get some Intercoin investor tokens for yourself. So head over to intercoin.org. As we continue, we actually had Dave Ridley call in and tell us about this Trump trailer situation that I hadn't heard anything about. And Matt, you checked it out. Pittsfield is apparently very nearby Concord, New Hampshire.
Just east of Concord.
So the state capital here in New Hampshire, where a man who was targeted by the town for a enforcement of the town's zoning ordinance, basically they said, hey, this 52-foot storage trailer, which looked like the back of a tractor trailer, essentially. It had wheels on it. Was not allowed to be on the property. Now, it just so happens that he had painted Trump USA across the 52-foot trailer. So he was using it basically as a billboard for people driving by.
I don't particularly want to look at it, but he has right to do it. And
yeah, absolutely. It's his property. He should be able to set whatever the hell he wants to on it with whatever message he wants on it. But unfortunately, District Judge Joseph LaPlante in the U.S. District Court didn't agree with his First Amendment lawsuit, which was brought by attorney Robert Foho, and he kicked it out of court with what's called summary judgment. That, as I understand it, is where a judge makes a decision on a case before it's even heard. Essentially, the judge is like, oh, well, this is crystal clear. We don't even need to have a hearing. Boom, case closed. You're, declined. You lose. So they're going to have to appeal. But I thought it was interesting to share the perspective of the Pittsfield Select Board on this. Jim Allard, the chairman of the select board, said that after being flexible and allowing for time extensions for the removal, the select board finally required McCoy to move it in 2018, and he did so. Almost 2 years later, McCoy filed the lawsuit. Allard said there was no political or free speech element to the board's decision. Quote, some members of the board who hadn't traveled that road weren't even aware that it had the sign on it. The message had no bearing whatsoever. So they're claiming, we don't care what the tractor trailer says. You're not allowed to have a tractor trailer sitting on your property because the words we wrote on paper say you're not allowed. And the select board had twice extended a permit for the trailer to be used as storage. He said, quote, "It seemed like somebody had an idea well after the fact, hey, let's sue the town and see what happens." He said further, "This was only a First Amendment case in the manner in which Mr. McCoy raised the issue. I can tell you with certainty that after the trailer was removed, it was replaced with numerous political signs on his property about which nobody said anything." So the town's making the argument, hey, look, we let you put all the political signs up that you wanted to. We don't care about the content of what's on the trailer. We just don't want the trailer there because we got ordinances.
Ordinances are important because ordinances, you've got to build bypasses, in order to.
Yeah, it's important.
No, it's not really important. It's
not important.
It's a bunch of crap.
Hey, there's a guy in Vermont who he could, depending on the outcome of this whole thing, he could follow this Vermont dude's lead.
What happened there?
A couple years ago, this guy went to war with the town over trying to build a garage on his property, and they wouldn't let him for whatever reason. So he put a telephone pole up on the land.
Mm-hmm.
It's right near the road, and he put a giant middle finger.
Oh, I remember this guy.
Yeah, and they can't take it. There's nothing they can do to take it down. It's freedom of
because
speech.
it's art.
It's art.
It's an art sculpture.
Yep. So that's in Westford. If you want to Google that, it's in Westford, Vermont. Just type in Westford, Vermont, or just Vermont middle finger.
I love that story.
Yeah,
it's still up.
It's still up, and it's lit. He put lighting around it, so you can.
But he still can't have his garage.
Correct.
Right?
It's worth it to the town, I guess.
But it really makes the town look horrible too.
Yeah,
and I hope they've learned their lesson, which they didn't, because.
Look, what needs to happen here, I think that zoning ordinances should be challenged. I hope Robert Foho, the attorney in this case, does go higher up with this. And, how many times have zoning ordinances actually gone to the Supreme Court? Has that ever happened?
I don't know. I doubt it.
I would love to see what happens, challenging zoning ordinances on a First Amendment basis. Look, this is my right to express myself, whether I'm expressing myself with a sign that says Trump or I just want to organize a tractor trailer and some, old burnout cars and, old washing machines on my property as an art exhibit.
It's a henge.
Right. Yeah, there you go. So why shouldn't I be able to do that? Oh, well, it looks ugly. Well, look, it's my property, isn't it? Shouldn't I be able to make it look however I want it to?
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, I agree with you.
No, you can't, because then these people over here will be able to sleep at night, the ones that steal your money.
Well,
they need to control you further.
Which is really, that's what it's about. The ugliness of the tractor trailer is bringing down the property values, and that means they can't tax everybody's side. They're going to have to reduce the assessments.
Unfortunately, I'm not optimistic about their chances because, why would the federal government not uphold government power? But they still should hopefully go all the way with this, so it'll be interesting to track this story and see how it goes. But in the meanwhile, there is something that the state government, state representatives who are liberty-friendly could do about this. They could abolish zoning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because in New Hampshire, there's what's no home rule. So some states have what's called home rule, where if like Chicago wants to have totally restrictive gun regulations, but the rest of the state not so much, they can do that because they have home rules, so they can pass whatever they want. I'm presuming Chicago has home rule. A lot of states have this. New Hampshire doesn't. So what that means is local towns and cities cannot pass. In theory, Keene ignored it once and they got away with it, but they, in theory, cannot pass ordinances, town ordinances that are not specifically authorized by the state government. So the state government says you can have zoning, and so therefore most of the towns in the state and cities have zoning. There's actually some that don't. Grafton is one of the towns that doesn't. There's a town called Leominster that doesn't have zoning. In those towns, you literally just go and build whatever you want. And you don't have to go to some government bureaucrat and beg for permission first. There's no code enforcement goons that can go around and stop you.
That sounds like heaven.
Yeah, that actually exists
nice.
here in New Hampshire. But unfortunately, most of these people are control freaks, and they do have zoning, and that just needs to end. And all it would take would be, a majority of the state house and the state senate, and then a signature from the governor, and zoning's over at that point. They could abolish all the zoning laws, all the code enforcement departments in one fell swoop.
I was thinking someone should run for tax assessor and then walk up to people's property and be like, oh, this is not my property. It's worth nothing to me. and just write 0.
You would never be given that job.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, so just essentially just cut off the money flow entirely.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you get away with it.
Well, your house looks like it's worth about $12.
But that's another thing.
That's what I would buy it for.
That's another thing, though. What the state could do with property taxes, when I should say, not rather if, but when we get enough freedom-loving people in state of government or the state government, we've got like a few dozen at this point, but we need more. They could keep property taxes in place. I mean, I think they should get rid of them, but they could make them voluntary. They could say, oh, there's no more penalty. Because right now, if you don't pay property taxes, there's like a 12%. I think they reduced it to 8%, an 8% per year per annum penalty on that. And then if you don't pay for 2 years, they can then proceed with a tax sale, sell your house at auction, and steal your house and your property right out from under you.
Yeah, you'd really start to see who the true tax lovers were. Let's see all those extreme pro-tax people coughing up all kinds of money if it goes voluntary.
Yeah, well, I mean, and then it would also do something really interesting, which would be to actually make governments accountable.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't know for sure that they were going to get the tax, like, it would still allow them to send out their tax bills. Like, okay, well, here's what we want you to pay. But if you didn't pay, if the tax couldn't be enforced against you, and you can just keep racking up, whatever the bills are, and you're not paying them, and there's no actual punishment for you to do that, then they've actually got to satisfy their customers, so to speak. They've actually got to do something valuable in order for people to say, okay, yeah, I think the city government's done good with the roads this year. I think they've done good with, fill in the blank, and then they can cut a check and send it in for whatever they think it's worth. So that's something else that, with enough people in the state government, we could actually change. So I do hope that someday we'll see a complete end to zoning ordinances and get these neighborhood Nazis out of our lives.
Get out of here.
Yeah, there's more coming up here. Hour 2's next. Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration Advisory Panel has voted to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as for younger adults who are at high risk of severe illness. FSN's Carolyn Malone reports.
An FDA panel approved the Moderna request for a half-dose COVID booster to give people aged 65 and over and younger at-risk adults. Studies have shown the Moderna third dose would restore antibodies that drop off 6 months after the initial vaccines. Pfizer vaccine boosters are already approved for some people. First dose vaccination rates have risen by more than 20% recently as a number of institutions, businesses and some states introduce vaccine mandates, even though federal rules to put mandates into effect are still being formalised. The White House COVID response coordinator said 77% of eligible Americans have now had at least one vaccine dose.
The U.S. has been re-elected to the UN Human Rights Council. The country quit the organization in 2018 under former President Donald Trump. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
In a mostly ceremonial vote at the UN General Assembly, the US was elected alongside 17 other countries to join the Human Rights Council for the next 3 years. 168 of the 193 member states cast their vote in favour of the US. The Council is tasked with protecting human rights and responding to violations across the world. Donald Trump quit the body 3 years ago, accusing it of hypocrisy for its criticism of Israel. President Joe Biden made rejoining the Council one of his priorities. The US will begin its new term in January.
Norwegian officials say the bow and arrow attack that killed 5 people in the town of Kongsberg appears to be an act of terrorism. They said the 37-year-old Danish-born suspect is a convert to Islam and may have been radicalized. He's due to appear in court on Friday. The Texas House of Representatives has passed a proposed redistricting map that would reinforce Republican dominance in elections for the next decade. Critics say the new boundaries slash the voting power of people of color, despite them fueling the state's population growth over the past decade. FSN's Tony Waterman has more from Austin.
Under the new map, districts with majority white voters would jump from 83 to 89, while the number of Hispanic majority districts would drop by 3, and black communities would lose 1 district. Texas was the only state in the U.S. to pick up 2 additional congressional seats after the last census, with people of color driving 95% of the state's growth. The way the map is gerrymandered makes it very likely that the state will send 2 more Republicans to Washington next year, influencing policy in an increasingly partisan country, potentially for the next decade.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, more on William Shatner's trip to space. He didn't boldly go where no man has gone before, but yesterday he did boldly go on a 10-minute space ride hosted by billionaire Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. The man who played Captain Kirk on the original Star Trek series, now aged 90, became the oldest person ever to travel in space, and afterwards broke down in tears as he described the experience to Jeff Bezos.
You're going 2,000 miles an hour, so you're through 50 miles, whatever the mathematics
fast.
are.
Yeah, really
it's like a beat, and suddenly you're through the blue. And you're into, it's mysterious and galaxies and things, but what you see is black. And what you see down there is light, and that's the difference. And not to have this, you have done something. I mean, what you have given me is the most profound experience I can imagine. I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened.
The actor only had 2 days training before his flight. Industry experts say Jeff Bezos engaged in a marketing masterstroke to invite Captain Kirk into space in a week in which his company, Blue Origin, has been accused of having a toxic work culture by anonymous past and present employees. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. An FDA advisory panel votes to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as for other high-risk adults. The U.S. is re-elected to the UN Human Rights Council after it quit the organization in 2018. And Texas lawmakers pass a proposed redistricting map that would reinforce Republican dominance in elections for the next decade. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
This is the Onion Week in Review. Gushing women voters announced Monday that they just can't help but feel an uncontrollable attraction to the sexist Republican Party. Saying they should know better but just can't resist the GOP's reckless neglect of women's health issues, smitten females across the country are reportedly driven wild by the GOP's blatant chauvinism.
I can't say no to bold, misogynistic politicians who think their authority extends to my uterus. Whenever you vote for a Republican, you feel like you're doing something a little bit naughty.
Top officials within the U.S. military military acknowledged Wednesday that they were desperate to be given just one solid war they could really knock out of the park. Citing the recent string of messy, ambiguous military engagements in the Middle East, members of the Pentagon brass called for a conflict against a sovereign nation with a standing army and a clear-cut bad guy who employs conventional tactics and weaponry.
No roadside bombs, no plainclothes militants hiding out among innocent civilians. Just a fair fight where two sides shoot at each other and someone wins. We're absolutely great at that.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. Open phones for you if you want to join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian,
Matt, and Joa.
Coming up, we'll talk about the Seattle Police Department possibly losing roughly 30-40% of its officers, somewhere in that range. Plus, the Chicago Police Department may be going through the same difficulties. All of this is over police standing up for bodily autonomy.
Hilarious.
For once. Of course, it's only their own bodies they're worried about. They still want to go and put you in a cage if you don't follow their rules. But we'll talk about all that coming up here. But first, we're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts. Major Payne is on the line, calling us from Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Major Payne.
Hey, good evening, Jim.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Well, the geniuses at the University of Harvard who graduate, Lord knows what percentage of these libtard judges and lawyers that are running roughshod over us now, although they have a 95% vaccination rate across the campus, they have decided to go back to online classes. They have so much faith in this vaccine they've been pushing. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I heard about this. Wasn't there like some cases on campus or something? Or what sparked them to do this? Do you know?
Well, most of the cases, the people that are vaccinated are catching the stuff and spreading the stuff. And the people that just catch it naturally, like I did a year and a half ago, and whoop it to death, like we're supposed to do, we're just fine. But I'll be damned if you're going to put a spiked army helmet on every blood cell in my body and cause log jams all over the world.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea that people are staying home and schooling instead of being physically trapped in these public school prisons and having to deal with people they don't know, strangers. At least they're at home, this.
Here's a cross thought on that. Back in the day, Washington used to work before they had trains and planes and automobiles and such, because all the politicians had to go there and stay in boarding houses and dine together. And they'd have beers and cigars after dinner and actually talk about the things that concern the nation.
Major Payne, thanks for the call tonight. Thanks for bringing that up here. Joe, I don't know. I feel like they shouldn't even be in government school at all, right?
Exactly.
Like, isn't that the ideal?
Yes.
I mean, being home from the government indoctrination center is better than being in the government indoctrination center. But the best thing parents can do is get their kids completely out from underneath their control at all. Because even we heard the stories in the last 18 months, even this home version of government school is still very controlling. There was more than one kid who got in trouble for like having a Nerf gun on the wall or something behind him, like got it written up for something like that.
It's like 1984. It really is.
Yeah, it's really creepy. Like some of the stuff that they would tell parents they weren't allowed to come in the room to monitor. Like
creepy.
Because before, your parents are at work or whatever, they're not likely to want to come in and just sit in a classroom in a government school. But if the parents are at home, I mean, it's a natural curiosity to say, hey, I've got some time. I can go and sit in and see what my kid is learning. I can audit this class, right? And some of these schools didn't want that happening either. So there was all kinds of like sick controls going on. So the best thing you can do is just get your kid the hell out of the government school. But in this case, what he was calling about was Harvard, which of course is college. And that's more of a choice, right? Like, you're not mandated by the state to go to college.
Sure.
I still don't think you probably should, because it's a huge waste of time and money in most cases, unless you absolutely need a college degree for whatever career you're planning on going to. The hell with that. Don't spend all that money on college.
If you don't know what you're going to college for, don't go.
Yeah, please don't. Yeah.
But in that case, if you do really want to go to college and there's like an actual reason for you to go, I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to do that from home, because part of the whole college experience is getting out from your parents' house, right?
See, like Harvard is kind of like a public school though, because they get a lot of public funding.
Yeah, they get all kinds of funding.
I mean, every college. I mean, with the exception of very, very few colleges, there's probably like a handful of colleges out there that are not taking government money. I mean, ultimately, they're all, whether they're part of the government system officially, they're all taking government handouts at some level. So I bet I can understand why a college student would say, you know what, I'd rather be on campus. But that would have been prior to COVID, because now the campuses are more insane than they've ever been with restrictions. I mean, it's nuts what they're doing to these kids. Some schools,
it's torture. Did
you ever go?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at kids at schools and like driving by the universities. They're all wearing masks, or
they'll force them to wear masks around town.
Yeah.
If they're caught. Yeah. If they're caught around town without their masks on, they will get written up at college.
At college.
I know that was the case last year. I don't know for sure.
It may have
this year.
changed. They seem to kind of looser here in the Keene area. But
it wasn't last year, though. I'll tell you that. You could always tell who the college students were, because they were the teenage people that were wearing masks, just walking down the street. Like, what are you doing? Well, they go to college. That's why.
I can't believe people comply with that and pay money.
Well, that's the thing. They already paid the college money, and then the college starts changing the rules on them.
Yeah, and the college isn't going to give them a refund if they pull the plug.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Although, arguably, they would have, a case, I would think.
I would think so.
Like,
but
hey,
who wants to prosecute that? Everybody's going to lay back on that kind of thing and not follow it through, so...
Anyway, you want to comment? You're welcome to join us here. Maybe you're going to college, you poor bastard. What's it like out there? You want to weigh in? Let us know here at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Meanwhile, we'll get into the story here about Seattle. This is from Fox5ny.com. Already facing a staffing crisis, the Seattle Police Department is now bracing for the possibility that hundreds of officers will fail to meet an October 18th vaccination deadline. And from what I understand, I don't think they publish it in this story. Oh, yeah, no, they do mention it. So there's about 1,000 deployable personnel in Seattle, and they're looking at losing another 300.
Wow.
So a huge chunk of officers. As of October 6th, 292 sworn personnel had yet to provide proof of a COVID-19 vaccination. And that number is down from 354 from the week prior to that. So some of them have gone ahead and jumped through the hoops, but a huge chunk of their total number of deployable officers has not done that. Seattle PD spokesbureaucrat Sergeant Randy Husserick confirmed to Fox 13 News there are an additional 111 officers awaiting results of exemption requests. So those 111 are not counted in the 292 figure. So there's 292 who they didn't even file an exemption request. They're not going to do anything. And then there's another 111 that said, all right, well, I've got a religious exemption or a medical exemption or whatever.
I saw a TikTok recently of some, I think the guy was like some old dock worker or some kind of thing, and apparently somebody showed up to his work site and said, you guys are all going to be fired if you don't show proof of vaccination by X and such a date. And they said, you know what, how about we help save you that hassle and we'll just leave right now. And they all started walking toward the gate, and apparently they were caught at the gate by their boss and said, you don't have to get the vaccination, go back to work.
Wow.
So,
That's interesting. Now, these are those stories that you see like posted online, and there's no real way to verify whether or not they're true or not.
He seemed pretty happy about the situation when he was doing the TikTok.
There was another one that somebody else, a similar story about some, I think it was, I don't know if it was Baltimore Airport. It was one of the major, airports, and some guy that owned like 5 restaurants told his employees, you got to be vaccinated by this date or else, you can't come back to work. And so people decided they just weren't going to come back to work. And then he reversed his decision and said, nope, never mind. You can be unvaccinated and work for us. And then he was back in business because his entire businesses were shut down. There was no one else willing to work except for the unvaccinated.
Well, it's like that around here. It's like you go to any restaurants. Like I went to Texas Longhorn and they just didn't have a staff. And so you had to wait just so that staff could wait on you.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is what it is.
They're suckers for following the edicts of a corrupt government. I mean, we know, as a matter of fact, that politicians are scumbags. Everybody knows this, but they're going to follow their rules. Don't just stop listening to these people and the people that follow their orders.
But I think Joe's point is that if any one of those people is unvaccinated and they say, "Well, you're going to make me get a vaccine, I'm out," that boss is going to say, "You know what? If we lose this one guy, we're closed."
Yep.
Right? We're coming up here in moments. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. You can bring what you want right here. The number is 603-283-6160. Seattle Police Department, hundreds of officers possibly are going to get fired coming up later this month. They've got a deadline of October 18th to get vaccinated or get their exemption approved. 111 officers have filed for the exemption. Another 292 haven't done anything. They're just going to wait and see.
So when you take the uniform off a cop because they're losing their job, do they just become regular criminals, or how does that work?
I don't know. Maybe they'll get their humanity back or something. Maybe
I
they
don't think they have it to begin
no,
with.
I don't know about that, Matt. I mean, I think that they were all humans when they started, but
but there's such a thing as a sociopath.
That's
and
true.
To become a sociopath that has a job and can live out its life, you have to find some kind of gainful employment. And police work, I mean, come on.
Well, could be the rise of like the new police, like private police, but they'll be corrupt. So it's not. Or let's hope not. But
I don't want to think that every police officer is corrupt. I just don't. I don't believe that that's true. I mean, we've had a couple of them like quit their jobs and then show that they're actually pretty decent guys.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I wish the best for those. I mean, that's a rare bird right there.
Yeah. I mean, Brad Jardis, former law enforcement officer of 10 years here in New Hampshire, he quit his job. Now it's been almost a decade, I think, since he quit at this point. And he then did go insane and tried to kill himself afterwards because of various different things. But, so that said, he was a decent guy.
He might have been a horrible guy that made a couple right moves.
He had the decency to see that what he was doing was wrong.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And he made the choice to stop doing it.
Yeah, I know a cop that intentionally fudges his own drug investigations because he doesn't think doesn't think drug addiction's a crime. It's an illness.
I appreciate that. We're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts, though. More about Seattle, what's happening there with upwards of 40% of their entire, officers. They're on duty kind of, these aren't desk clerks. Right. On-duty officers could be fired coming up in the next few weeks. But let's go to Kyle. He's in New Jersey. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, hi.
Hey.
I just wanted to discuss the concept that I had regarding information because, we live in an age of information. And I think it was interesting that if you think about it, human beings, we weren't supposed to be able to read and write, but we can. And because we can do that, we're able to spread information and share information amongst each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I also began to think that perhaps the fuel of the spirit is information. And if you think of all the living things around us, they really are composed of information. And so it made me think.
Like DNA?
DNA is information. Energy can also be information because it can be measured.
Okay.
And that measurement is information. So then I started thinking a lot about God and the spiritual side of things. Perhaps God is the source of all information, of infinite amounts of information. And perhaps when we pass away, our information, the information that's contained with us, goes to that source.
Yeah, could be. Or if you believe like I do, you believe that everything and everyone is God, and so therefore the information doesn't go anywhere. It's already connected to God because we're all part of that.
Right.
Well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, you could say that too. I think
some would say that we are essentially little pieces of God having experience, sort of on God's behalf. So we are the way that God experiences itself, if you will.
Yeah, but I think too, like there's information out there that is beyond our understanding.
Oh, absolutely.
And that information has to come from somewhere. And that information can't come from us because we don't have that information. And so
and there's a good chance we'll never be able to grasp that information, right? Like, so being able to look at other dimensions. We're three-dimensional, fourth-dimensional creatures, depending on how you look at it. I think the fourth dimension is time, right? So if there's a creature that can exist in the fifth dimension, then they would be able to see the entirety of our timelines all at one fell swoop, and they would be able to grasp, where Joe was born to the moment that he passes away, and, that would be true for all of us, and that's something that we have no concept of.
Yeah, we call those, we have a word for that. It's called an ultra-terrestrial.
Really? Okay.
The ultra-terrestrials. The Mothman, if you ever heard of the Mothman prophecies.
I don't know anything about it. I've heard of it. But I don't
very,
know.
very creepy. It was people were getting phone calls in the middle of the night from something with a weird voice. Some of them recorded the phone call, and it wasn't a human voice making the noises, but it actually was along the same vibration as a little voice that a moth would have.
Really?
And people, like an insect would have. And but
what was it saying to people?
They were predicting plane crashes and stuff like that. So and huge tragedies, and it knew them all in advance, and it would just blurt out weird facts, and then the facts would happen. And
should get into a death pool with this guy.
Yeah, right. So but they after and there's been other instances of similar type things all over the world for time out of mind, and over time it's just been decided. Actually, with the Mothman in particular, a journalist who was studying it went to a Cornell University professor to ask him what the nature of this is, what's the ontology of this, and this professor at Cornell had been kind of studying himself, and he goes, these are basically what we would refer to as demigods. They're higher than we are. They're on a higher plane than we are, and they can see, they have a better view of what we're going through than we do. They can see it from a higher place, and they just come to be known as ultra-terrestrials.
Thanks, Kyle, for the call tonight, man. I appreciate hearing from you. The number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. It's interesting thinking about what that would be like, because, again, it's hard to really grasp that from our perspective. I mean, it's one thing to say, somebody in this fifth dimension or this ultra being could look down and see the entirety of your life. But that also begs the question of, is free will a thing, right? Because if free will is a thing, then your life would be able to go in all manner of different directions. And so we like to believe in free will, and I personally do, but some people don't. Some people would say, you're predetermined to do everything that you've done because you couldn't have done anything differently based on the circumstances surrounding you. So can these ultra beings see all variants of Joa, where Joa is, in one life the president of the United States, in another life, he's this peaceful guy that he is today?
There could be these timelines and these splits. It's possible.
Yeah. So it's just kind of interesting thinking, would this being be able to see all of the potentials all at once?
Maybe that's an ultra-terrestrial to the ultra-terrestrial. Maybe there's another level of that.
Right. That's a great question.
All I know is that we're made out of vibration and, this electrical light and vibrations. And when we pass away, it's being absorbed by whatever's around us. And I look at it as really physical. We all believe in our different ways. I just hope that I'm in a good place when I pass away.
For sure.
With
good people.
Yes, exactly.
At a good time.
Yeah.
Well, was it Bill Hicks? He said, I'm bringing it up now. Today, a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed into a slow vibration. That we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream. We are the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather.
I love that.
Yeah. There you go.
At 603-283-6160. Definitely, if you don't know Bill Hicks's work, you should check him out. Rest in peace. Unless he's actually Alex Jones, in which case we're glad you're still with us, Bill. 603-283-6160. More coming up.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate, results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great, homelessness and hunger to eliminate, let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration Advisory Panel has voted to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as for younger adults who are at high risk of severe illness. FSN's Carolyn Malone reports.
An FDA panel approved the Moderna request for a half-dose COVID booster to give people aged 65 and over and younger at-risk adults. Studies have shown the Moderna third dose would restore antibodies that drop off 6 months after the initial vaccines. Pfizer vaccine boosters are already approved for some people. First-dose vaccination rates have risen by more than 20% recently as a number of institutions, businesses and some states introduce vaccine mandates, even though federal rules to put mandates into effect are still being formalized. The White House COVID response coordinator said 77% of eligible Americans have now had at least one vaccine dose.
The U.S. has been re-elected to the UN Human Rights Council. The country quit the organization in 2018 under former President Donald Trump. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
In a mostly ceremonial vote at the UN General Assembly, the US was elected alongside 17 other countries to join the Human Rights Council for the next 3 years. 168 of the 193 member states cast their vote in favour of the US. The Council is tasked with protecting human rights and responding to violations across the world. Donald Trump quit the body 3 years ago, accusing it of hypocrisy for its criticism of Israel. President Joe Biden made rejoining the Council one of his priorities. The US will begin its new term in January.
Norwegian officials say the bow and arrow attack that killed 5 people in the town of Kongsberg appears to be an act of terrorism. They said the 37-year-old Danish-born suspect is a convert to Islam and may have been radicalized. He's due to appear in court on Friday. The Texas House of Representatives has passed a proposed redistricting map that would reinforce Republican dominance in elections for the next decade. Critics say the new boundaries slash the voting power of people of color, despite them fueling the state's population growth over the past decade. FSN's Tony Waterman has more from Austin.
Under the new map, districts with majority white voters would jump from 83 to 89, while the number of Hispanic majority districts would drop by 3, and black communities would lose 1 district. Texas was the only state in the U.S. to pick up 2 additional congressional seats after the last census, with people of color driving 95% of the state's growth. The way the map is gerrymandered makes it very likely that the state will send 2 more Republicans to Washington next year, influencing policy in an increasingly partisan country, potentially for the next decade.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it is Free Talk Live. You can bring up what you want. The number here for you to take control of the airwaves, 603-283-6160. Whether you want to get into the meaning of the universe, we can do that here, as we touched on just a moment ago with the caller there. Or you can talk about something a little bit more down to earth, like Seattle possibly firing upwards of 40% of their entire uniformed police squad.
That's amazing.
Would be absolutely incredible if that happened.
Hey, I'm okay with all the good cops, or even the people who disagree with these little minor things. It's not really minor, it's major. But just leaving for like some sort of, their own decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they could rather than just how much they're getting paid.
Yeah, I think you said before, maybe they could strike out on their own and do private service for people.
Yeah, and they'll need it because the government has screwed up Seattle so bad that it's a desperate, impoverished, homeless city. I can't even describe to you the homelessness in Seattle. I go to Seattle on a somewhat regular basis.
Yeah.
And there are basically tents under anything that blocks the sky from coming down, there's a tent under for miles. And I mean, several tents.
You're talking about in the heart of the city, right?
No. I mean, from the heart of the city, radiating outward
Anywhere.
for miles and miles and miles and miles of tents.
Oh, my God.
And it is unbelievable. There's no way of hiding it. And this is all the doing of the Seattle City Council, and it's not even the state of Washington, really, because most of the state of Washington is not Seattle, and they don't feel the way Seattle does. But just like New York City, any other place where there's a big city, they are using the major population centers to control the laws and the economies of everywhere else in the state. So everybody's suffering because of Seattle. But they've created all this homelessness and desperation, and they've taken away a lot of the gun rights of the people of the state of Washington due to the opinions of the people of Seattle. So now that you're going to take the police away, I wonder what the crime situation will actually be.
Well, I mean, I don't think the police really stop crime.
They don't. But I'm wondering, people are also not. I think you may have some people feeling emboldened to see a lot fewer cops too. So maybe if there's desperate people out there who may try to commit some actual crimes because they know nobody can defend themselves. There's no guns, and a lot of people in Seattle are just opposed to guns. So I wonder how this will all play out. Will this create a more pro-gun Seattle when people get robbed at knife point and stick point and things like that?
That's an interesting question because we know that police departments around the country are having a difficult time recruiting. Like a lot of people don't want to be cops.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah. That's without the whole COVID thing. That's that's anyway.
Because the job sucks. Yep. And it is, it's a dangerous job. I mean, it's not as dangerous as roofing or logging or something like that.
And not everybody wants to become a wife beater.
Oh, geez.
And some people like dogs.
And a very high percentage of police are actually domestic abusers, and that's a fact.
And seeing that they have a demand, they're probably loosening up who qualifies.
Yeah, they'll start taking old drug dealers or whoever they want, right?
Or cops from other area codes that got fired over there, but we'll hire over here.
Yeah, well, I imagine that's what some of these officers are going to do. Is they're probably just going to give this will be their excuse to just leave Seattle and go get a job in Spokane or something else, somewhere else they can get hired without being vaccinated. Because that's ultimately the issue here. Is these officers, hundreds of them, 292 officers have not been vaccinated, or at the very least they haven't proven that they have, and then another 111 that are trying to get an exemption. So that's like 400 officers basically, which is. They've only got about 1,000. So you're talking about 40% of the entire department, according to...
They were already hurting, I think.
Yeah, that's from my understanding as well. So
1,325 cops.
Well, according to the story, they've lost about 300 officers.
Wow.
So they're down. So here's what they say here. This is Mayor Jenny Durkin told city staff in an email Monday, quote, "We value each of you and do not want to lose you as employees, but the people that count on you the most are the ones that need you to get vaccinated," she said. Since the vaccine mandate was announced in early August, she's remained evasive about whether she'll truly fire the unvaccinated officers at a time of low staffing and high 911 response times. Seattle PD has already lost more than 300 officers since the height of the defunding debate in 2020. Remember the summer of 2020? Yeah. There was a lot of talk about defunding the police. And apparently they lost 300 officers from that time frame. So they currently only have about 1,000 deployable personnel. So 400 of that 1,000 are currently on the potential chopping block.
The city, the wiki for Seattle's police department says they have sworn officers, 1,325, and then deployable civilian employees of 631. I don't know what that is.
Huh.
Deployable civilian employees.
Yeah, deployable civilian employees.
I don't know what that means either. Maybe it's like the posse, like in some places. Like I remember down in Florida, the sheriff of Manatee County had like the sheriff's posse, which were like volunteers that
riot police.
No, they weren't riot police. They were like volunteers that could be used for certain purposes that had been sort of deputized in some way, but they weren't full on city employees. Now they're saying these are employed with the city, so maybe those are like desk workers who've been issued a gun, or I don't know what that means.
Yeah, good question.
She answers the final months of her term. The mayor is faced with the dilemma to go back on her vaccine mandate or thrust the city into a public safety emergency. And I don't know. I don't think if they lose half their police force or close to half their police force, you're going to see a huge increase in crime.
Well, I'm wondering also, here's another possibility. They could just bring in the National Guard.
They might.
And then you've got literally a military police state.
Then you'll be wishing you had some guns.
In anticipation of the October 18th deadline, the interim Seattle police chief, so they don't even have a police chief right now. advised his department to transition to Phase 3 mobilization effective October 13th. I don't know what that means. According to an internal memo, the change in posture will require all sworn personnel to be on standby to respond to 911 calls. That includes detectives assigned to specialty units. The governor told the news agency that across the state, agencies have contingency plans to help ensure basic levels of staffing. But for some, it's too late. A Seattle PD officer with 5 years on the force told Fox 13 on Wednesday she plans to leave even if the mandate is relaxed. Quote, "The environment has been pretty toxic and negative, not just from this whole mandate, but prior to that as well. I'm not sure this would be a good place for me to work long term for my mental health. It's been very stressful," she says. She says she will likely try to get hired on with an agency outside of King County. And by the way, King County recently instituted a mandatory vaccination pass for not just Seattle, but the entire county. As far as, I think, indoor activities and what you've seen happen in New York City and Los Angeles with the vaccination passport, King County's, I believe, the first county to put that into place.
Well, if you like that kind of thing, go ahead and stay there. But I'd get out of there.
Losing even 50 to 75 officers in one day, according to an anonymous patrol officer, the response times for the city will go up drastically, he said. He works out of the West Precinct downtown, so they're already slow. At 1,000 officers, this would almost cut that in half. The officer put in for a religious exemption, but is not hopeful that his accommodation will be approved. He says, quote, "I'll continue working until the day they fire me, and that's about all that I can do." So there you go.
Fantastic. I mean, people are actually standing up, and it's the line, the dividing line is really being defined, and it's above the police. That's for sure.
When you say it's above the police, what do you mean?
As in, they've drawn it above them, as in they're not going to save them in the end. Like they're giving them.
Oh, you're saying the government
choice.
is going to go ahead and cut them? You think they're going to cut?
Yeah,
their
I mean,
jobs?
even like the pawns up in the federal government, they're forced to take the shots too,
Mhm.
and it's like this is really a separating of classes here.
So you don't think at the last minute the Seattle mayor is going to go back on her mandate? She's not going to reverse course. She's going to fire these guys.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
If they're talking about it now, they mean it.
All right. Yeah. And I think you may be right about that, because it's very important for the government to show solidarity on this vaccine. They can't allow their own employees to show them up and to make them look weak. Right? So I think I'm with you on this, Joe. I think they are going to go through with it and fire 40%.
They've invested so much into it so far.
Yeah, 603-283-6160. You can join us here, share your thoughts. It's Free Talk Live. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The number, 603-283-6160. You know, I really enjoy seeing governments fight with each other. Love it. I don't like it when they're bothering people over stupid zoning crap like we talked about earlier. They threatened a guy over having a trailer in his yard in Pittsfield, New Hampshire. And, of course, they do this stuff to people all across the United States, all around the world. There's stupid government rules and forcing them, shoving them down people's throats. But if they're busy fighting with each other,
it's great.
Then that's less time that they can spend ruining our lives.
How can we pour gas on that fire?
Oh, I know one.
How?
You could just file complaints.
Well, now, what does that do?
It forces the city attorneys to keep looking at these complaints.
Who do you complain with? I mean, you're complaining about, like, the police?
Anything and everything that you can complain about the government. And that's pretty much everything.
Do they have to do anything? I mean, can't they just throw it in the trash?
I mean, they could just... They have to have some sort of determination on every complaint.
Really? So they have to give you, like, a letter back or something like that?
They have to respond to it.
And you've done this before, it sounds like.
I've done a lot of complaining.
Has any of it ever resulted in anything besides wasting their time, though?
Well, we filed a complaint because they were not in compliance for records request, and the complaints went forward, and they were in violation.
Who was this?
Pawtucket Police.
Pawtucket, that's in
Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Yeah. So ACLU took on the case, and they sued them federally, and we won.
Sweet.
So they're in violation.
Are they still in violation?
Yes, I have not seen these police reports that they're supposed to be there and they're not there, and they just refuse to.
I think I heard a judge complaining about that type of thing at one point. I think he called it paper terrorism.
Yeah, these are
big cases too.
It's their own bureaucracy. You're just adding to it's their stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we were like, hey, we want the last 4 years of records requests.
Your attorneys requested that from them? Is that
we just did it on our own.
Okay.
And they charged us, and we paid for it, but they.
Oh my God! What did that cost?
A lot.
How much are we talking about?
Well,
thousands.
We spent thousands of dollars throughout the whole state doing records requests, and you can see we just put them online. We can't even read all of it because it's a lot.
It's too much data.
Too much.
How much did it cost?
Thousands. Over 4,000.
Wow.
But on Pawtucket, I don't know exactly the number in Pawtucket.
Doesn't it feel bad to give them that money, though?
Yeah, but then if really think about it, we probably saved people a lot of money because they went to our website, looked up.
They could just get the info.
They get the records from our site instead of having to pay the state again.
It's true. It's true.
Imagine like how much resource that could have been for people. And
yeah, I always feel bad if I ever do a Freedom of Information Act request. I never want to pay these goons for it. I always like bring a camera in and I just take pictures of the, because at least, and I don't know what the rules are in Rhode Island, but in New Hampshire generally they will let you inspect what they come up with, and if you get your own camera, you just take pictures of it and then give it back to them. They're like, all right, thanks, have a nice day. But if you want copies, if you want them to make copies, or if you want them to put it on a CD-ROM or
then
DVD,
it costs a fortune.
Then they're going to charge you for it.
So they got to dig it out. But if you're just like, hey, can I have the last 4 years? It's not really that hard.
Because they've already come up with those.
They just like, oh, okay, all these folders on this computer, boom, send it to you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even want it printed. They can save that. Just get it to me digitally.
But they still charge you for the digital, don't they?
Yeah, but probably not nearly as much. It's
Okay.
like time and CD, which is, I don't know where you can buy CDs anymore.
Yeah, I think they still got them at Staples or wherever. If you ever need some, I got some in the closet. So Chicago, we're going to shift gears over to another major city, Chicago. So Seattle may be losing up to 40% of their police force. The story here from MSN.com. Tensions between Chicago's mayor and police over the city's vaccine mandate grew this week as the head of the police union, and last I heard there were multiple police unions in Chicago, and all of them were against the vaccine mandate, urged officers to ignore the deadline to report their vaccination status. Chicago city employees, including police officers, are required to report their vaccination status by this Friday. The story was published 12 hours ago, so this is pretty fresh. So that's tomorrow. Employees who aren't vaccinated will be required to get tested twice weekly, a temporary measure until the end of the year as the city decides what to do with unvaccinated employees. But the head of the Chicago branch of the Fraternal Order of Police, John Catanzara, urged members of the union in a video message this week to, quote, hold the line, unquote. He told officers not to submit their vaccination statuses and instead flood the city with exemption requests on Thursday. Quote, submit those all on Thursday, give them everything at one time, and that's it, he said. Do not fill out the portal information, he added, referring to the reporting of vaccination statuses to the city.
Is this a bad time for me to pay my taxes in pennies? I'm here.
It's a bad time to pay taxes.
That's a great point. Officers and other city employees who fail to report their vaccination status by Friday will be, quote, placed on a non-disciplinary no-pay status, said the mayor. Catanzara said that it is safe to say the city of Chicago will have a police force at 50% or less over the weekend.
That sounds to me like she's threatening the public.
What do you mean
think
by
that's
that?
a scare tactic. She's trying to scare the crap out of the public.
But what good would that do?
Who knows?
Politicians
always want to scare the public.
Get the people to like beg their family members who are cops to go and get a vaccination or something like that?
Maybe. Yeah.
Catanzara said, again, they may be at less than 50% of the police. Because how many of these Chicago cops are going to go to work if there's no paycheck?
I wouldn't.
They're not going to.
How are they going to decide who's who? And
well, the people who don't report. So there's the cops who have they're good, obedient, serfs, and they're doing what they're told, and they're getting the vaccination, and they've reported that because they want to keep their jobs.
That's crazy. That's no way it's going to happen.
What's not going to happen?
They're just going to let all these cops just get fired?
Well, they're not going to be, quote, fired. They're going to be placed in a non-disciplinary no-pay status.
Yeah, seems. Yeah.
They're going to be told, hey, you aren't being told you can't come to work. We're just not going to pay you if you show up.
I see.
Basically. So they're not going to show up.
Probably throw them in a fusion center. Just still spy on your neighbors or something.
Whatever happens because of that manpower issue that falls at the mayor's doorstep, said the police department or their union spokesman. Lightfoot, that's the mayor, said at a news conference Wednesday that the city was, quote, prepared, adding that Catanzaro was, quote, doing a patent disservice to his members every single day by encouraging resistance against the vaccines. She said, quote, if you're not vaccinated, you are playing with your life, the life of your family, the life of your colleagues, and members of the public, she said. According to the story here, Chicago, like many other large cities, has required that city employees get vaccinated against coronavirus, emphasizing that for public-facing employees in particular, like police officers and firefighters, vaccinations protect not only the employees, but people from the community. Law enforcement officers across the country, from San Francisco to L.A. to Denver, have resisted vaccine mandates. And even here in Keene, I believe they don't have a mandate here in Keene, but I had a Keene police officer stop a few weeks ago. Bonnie and I were having dinner we were outside because it was a nice day out. Actually, it was really nice today too, but we were just sitting outside having dinner at one of the tables on the Yasso Jamaican place in downtown Keene, and up comes Jason Short, the very same officer who was a mindless automaton drone threatening people outside of our house, wearing a trench coat during the raid that happened here with the FBI.
Eyewitnesses assaults on people.
Yeah, very same guy. He was playing Mr. Nice Guy, coming up, talking about how much he agrees with us and how he's always...
What a scumbag. You tell him to shut up and walk away?
No, I played along and, listened to what he had to say. He was acting like he's all into, he likes the libertarians.
What a piece of garbage.
and he agreed. He was saying that when he was the police prosecutor, he used to actually reduce all the marijuana arrests to a violation.
Come on,
just to get him out of court.
Compassionate tyrant.
Yeah, and but he did admit that he would do whatever it is that he was told to do. So he is just a complete.
But he agrees with you.
What a piece
tyrant.
of garbage.
Yeah, complete tyrant. But although at the same time agreeing, he says he agrees with us on the vaccination thing and, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of cops that are against being forced to put something into their veins. However, they don't have any problem putting you in a jail cell if you decide that you want to put something in your body that is against some list of things that some bureaucrats wrote down on a piece of paper somewhere.
They are idiots, and they are a danger to society.
And when I brought this point up to Jason, he said, "Oh, well, let's not compare apples and oranges."
Wow.
I can't hear this story anymore. I can't even thinking about these. I can't think about these people anymore.
I mean, the hypocrisy of these people. It's like you said earlier, Matt. You don't know how to feel about this, right? Like,
I don't know how to feel about it.
I'm going to say that I don't think they should be forced to do this, but I wish they would wake the F up and have some damn consistency when it comes to...
Consistency is not their game.
No one's forced to do anything.
They're liars.
Everyone makes their own choices. If you want to get paid, go ahead and do that horrible thing. But you know what? It's on your conscience now that you already said no.
If they have a conscience. More coming up here in moments. Hour 3's on the way. This is Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times best-selling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Microsoft is shutting down the Chinese version of its professional networking site LinkedIn. The platform for job seekers and employers was the last major U.S. social network operating in China. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more from San Francisco.
Microsoft is citing what it calls a challenging operating environment as a reason for shutting down the Chinese version of LinkedIn. According to the Wall Street Journal, earlier this year, Chinese regulators demanded that the platform be more strict in regulating
the U.S.
content.
Food and Drug
LinkedIn
Administration
later blocked
advisory
the profiles of several human rights advocates, academics, and journalists, a move which led to criticism in the United States. LinkedIn had over 50 million users and offered, among other things, a way for Chinese businesses to connect with overseas customers. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose more than 500 points after a positive start to the third quarter earnings season. Investors also reacted to better than expected economic data in the U.S. FSN's Sarah Walton reports from New York.
The Dow rallied by 1.6% on Thursday, its biggest jump since March. The S&P and Nasdaq both rose by 1.7%. It comes after a bumper set of earnings results from several big banks and members of the S&P 500. Pharmacy chain Walgreens Boots Alliance rose about 9% after beating earnings expectations and announcing a takeover of primary care company Village MD. Bank of America went up by nearly 4% after also beating earnings predictions. And Moderna saw its share price increase by more than 3% after the US FDA recommended adults should get a half-dose booster shot of its COVID-19 vaccine. Figures for weekly jobless claims also came in lower than expected at 293,000. It's the first time it's fallen below 300,000 since the start of the pandemic.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration advisory panel has voted to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as for younger adults who are at high risk of severe illness. FSN's Carolyn Malone reports.
An FDA panel approved the Moderna request for a half-dose COVID booster to give people aged 65 and over and younger at-risk adults. Studies have shown the Moderna third dose would restore antibodies that drop off 6 months after the initial vaccines. Pfizer vaccine boosters are already approved for some people. First-dose vaccination rates have risen by more than 20% recently as a number of institutions, businesses and some states introduce vaccine mandates, even though federal rules to put mandates into effect are still being formalized. The White House COVID response coordinator said 77% of eligible Americans have now had at least one vaccine dose.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, more on William Shatner's trip to space. He didn't boldly go where no man has gone before, but yesterday he did boldly go on a 10-minute space ride hosted by billionaire Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. The man who played Captain Kirk on the original Star Trek series, now aged 90, became the oldest person ever to travel in space, and afterwards broke down in tears as he described the experience to Jeff Bezos.
You're going 2,000 miles an hour, so you're through 50 miles, whatever the mathematics
fast.
are.
Yeah, really
it's
fast.
like a beat, and suddenly you're through the blue. And you're into, it's mysterious and galaxies and things, but what you see is black. And what you see down there is light, and that's the difference. And not to have this, you have done something. I mean, what you have given me is the most profound experience I can imagine. I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened.
The actor only had 2 days training before his flight. Industry experts say Jeff Bezos engaged in a marketing masterstroke to invite Captain Kirk into space in a week in which his company, Blue Origin, has been accused of having a toxic work culture by anonymous past and present employees. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Microsoft shuts down the Chinese version of its professional networking site LinkedIn. The Dow rises more than 500 points after a positive start to the third quarter earnings season. And an FDA advisory panel votes to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as other high-risk adults. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
Shortly after being fired from his coding position at a downsizing tech firm, 34-year-old Irvine native Sam Morrison told reporters Monday that he believed he had finally achieved the sort of work-life balance for which he has long strived.
Ever since I got fired, it just seems like my whole entire routine is just clicking. I go for jogs in the afternoon, spend nights with my wife and kid. I'm even cooking more. Everything just feels right.
Morrison, who since his termination has found time to pick up reading again, eat a healthy diet, and sleep more than 5 hours a night, noted that his unemployment has allowed him to find a level of harmony in his personal life that he never before thought possible.
For a while there, I thought that I was going to spend the rest of my life constantly worrying about getting to the office on time and pleasing my boss. Outside of the late payments on the house, the mounting credit card debt, the rapidly depleting savings, my life is essentially stress-free. I honestly couldn't be happier.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the third hour of the program. Open phones. As always, we invite you to bring up what you want here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. As major cities like Chicago and Seattle, as we discovered, may be losing 40-50% of their police forces over these vaccination mandates. Those are scheduled to shake out within the next few days, if not couple weeks. Apparently, Chicago's deadline is tomorrow. And so this weekend, there may be like upwards of half of the Chicago cops who aren't going to report for duty because they are going to be in a no-pay sort of probationary status. You want to comment on that, you're welcome to. With you tonight, it's Ian.
Matt.
And Joa.
Plus, Joa, you found a story about the marijuana, what do they call it here? Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act of 2021 getting passed by a House committee in Washington, D.C. Now, there's not a lot that, is very exciting coming out of D.C., but this might actually be worth talking about. So we'll get into that coming up here in a bit. But going first to your phone calls and thoughts, plus Hillary Clinton getting heckled out in Europe, apparently. We'll talk about that. But Epicurus is on the line to start things out here this hour, calling us from Manchester, New Hampshire. Go ahead, Epicurus.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Sure. I just wanted to make a book recommendation for folks. It's a science fiction book I read here a few years back, and it's got a very interesting theory or connection between viruses and human evolution, or evolution in general. So in our COVID world that we're in now, everyone's thinking about germs, so I thought this would kind of put people out of their comfort zones a little bit and just give them another perspective on viruses. It's a book called Darwin's Radio by Greg Bear. And I'm not sure how much of this is based on fact, but it's a pretty interesting theory of evolution in which the idea is that viruses, the purpose of viruses in nature are, right, they're not bad, right? They're not inherently evil or even inherently destructive to any species. But his theory is that viruses are a communication tool. Their purpose is to communicate information between different species, and also like maybe from one generation of a species to another generation. And the idea in the book, a couple of characters, scientists, kind of discover an interesting connection between a modern-day flu-like virus and a virus that they collected samples of from a Homo erectus body that was kind of found by some archaeologists. And they basically find out that, kind of in the story, that over time, viruses are they're used, but then they're also kind of reincorporated back into DNA and preserved over a long period of time, and that they kind of act as a form of a trigger to incentivize an organism to evolve and make it a new version of a species to adapt to environmental conditions. And it's pretty trippy because it's a two book series
Well, I mean, that sounds like, a lot like a forest fire, right? Where, eventually fire comes through wooded areas and takes things down, but the forest comes back stronger and thicker than before. I mean, same thing's true with humans, right? Like, the virus comes through, takes out the weakest of the herd, and then those who survived it are more likely to survive in the future. That's sort of the natural process, isn't it?
Yeah, and basically, so as a form of population control, definitely that's definitely, I think, the purpose of all diseases. But more appropriate to sort of this theory that he's putting out there in this book, it'd be more like if there was a forest fire, right, you would want, in a way, it might be beneficial for the species that survive the forest fire for whatever they learn, right, from that experience, and how to detect a fire ahead of time, smell it or whatever, recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
That information is probably beneficial to transmit that information from species on one side of the planet to the species on another side of the planet. And that's kind of what happens a lot of times, especially with genes, of course. That sort of thing is passed down, and that's how you have really, really sophisticated instincts. But basically, I think the theory he's kind of trying to push is that a lot of that information is pushed not only through genes, through reproduction, but also through viruses. It's a pretty trippy story. And in the second book, he actually shows like these new forms of humans. It's kind of plausible, sort of, in a way, that that nature decides that there needs to be a new form of human because of social pressures that we're experiencing now. Namely, that there's an increased need for communication in our modern world, and these new humans that develop have a much stronger ability to communicate. They use two vocal cords. They have two sets of vocal cords, which apparently we also have. But they have a special modified tongue, so they can speak in two voices at the same time. And they have like kind of glowing, luminescent freckles, so they can communicate even more information through how they luminesce. And they have very strong sense of smell and pheromone glands. So
this is sci-fi that you're talking about, right? This book?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and what's it called again?
It's called Darwin's Radio.
Darwin's Radio.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on Amazon right now. You can get a used copy for about $4 shipped.
Sounds like you really enjoyed it, Epicurus. Anything else you want to share tonight?
Just recommend people read that. If anything, it's a great read, but it'll give people a new perspective on evolution and viruses, and maybe not think of viruses as quite such an evil thing.
Thanks for the call, man. I appreciate hearing from you. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the government is trying to step in between nature, right? Like trying to disintermediate nature's effect on mankind, and as a result, keep some of the weaker people around, because government loves weak people, right? Like it loves to have people who feel like they need to be taken care of. And so that's who they're pandering to here with this, mommy government, paternalistic viewpoint.
That's why they encourage poor people to have more kids. They get more money from the state when they have more kids. So
more welfare.
It's not really the smartest thing to be dependent on the state. So
no, it's a terrible idea.
That's why they're encouraging it. And
George Carlin had a bit where he was talking about how he didn't have polio. He swam in the East River as a kid.
That's not a nice river to swim in.
No, it's horrible. and he's talking about, the kid that ate the marbles didn't get to grow up to reproduce and things,
for good reason.
We're protecting the weak for sure. I don't want to go down into a eugenics rabbit hole, but there's something to be said for an organic form of eugenics, and it's being definitely prevented by warning labels on everything. And this bag is not a toy. Well, maybe the dumb one should figure that out the hard way.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't wish harm on anybody.
Not really, but
at the same time, I do accept that.
When you hear
that
about
is nature.
stupidity, hurting, and killing people, sometimes you gotta shrug.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay for the weakest to be culled out of the herd. I mean, that's the natural way of things.
Natural order.
And by trying to stop that from happening, they are creating a weaker group of humanity that they can then take advantage of, that they can then, as you say, Joe, get hooked on welfare. They can indoctrinate them to be even weaker, whether it be plying them with, misinformation or lies, or plying them with soy or whatever, right? Making people as weak and as pliable as they possibly can, just straight up lying to them.
Their biggest goal is to separate us based on who's obedient and who is disobedient. And if that's going to divide the line for the police, that's where it's going to divide.
Well, I'm happy to see that happening.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
finally, it's making it clear. That's one thing that has been a benefit in this last 18 months. As horrible as it has been, and as depressing as it has been to see people being so obedient in large numbers, at the very least, we now can see at a glance who the most obedient people are and who aren't, right? You got a mask on walking around, maybe there's a slight chance you actually need it for some, like in Japan prior to the all these mask mandates, people would wear masks anyway, just out of their own choice to try to keep their sickness from spreading to people. And hey, if that's your choice, that's fine. But if you're doing it because the government told you to,
clown.
And that's the super majority of people doing it.
Cosplay, like at this point, like they're doing it because like somehow
it's signaling.
They're signaling, but they somehow like the feeling of being controlled, and it's become like. It raises their serotonin levels when they're told what to do.
Feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good to them. And so having that dividing line is very important, and it is resulting in more people picking up their lives and moving to be around more like-minded people. Like, if you want freedom, you ought to get to New Hampshire. If you want some sort of conservative state, you ought to get to Texas. If you want a liberal state, get to California. Let's get people together. More coming up.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up this weekend, Saturday, October 16th, brand new event is going to be happening in Europe. And it's sold out for physical tickets, but you can still get online tickets, digital tickets, if you will, from lifetimeliberty.com. The event is called Liberty in Our Lifetime. It's being hosted by the Free Private Cities Foundation. Our very own Mark Edge is apparently going to be there speaking at the event, so you'll be able to, I presume, see him speak if you get one of these digital tickets over at lifetimeliberty.com. Speakers include Crypto Valley, Prospera, the Seasteading Institute, and more projects that are happening now around the world that are working to achieve a lofty goal of securing freedom in our lifetime. You can go and get your digital tickets at lifetimeliberty.com and see what people are doing globally to create voluntary societies with a live and let live attitude. That's this Saturday, October 16th, lifetimeliberty.com to get your tickets now. Here tonight, it's Ian,
Matt, and Joa.
We're going to get into... I don't know if it's as much of a story as just a fun clip that you wanted to play.
Yeah, I think it's a
Joa.
great story because it really shows how much the world's awake and at least people in Belfast, right? This was Belfast.
Yeah, I mean, if the guy from Belfast was coming here to Keene, I wouldn't know who he is, and I wouldn't know what to say about him. But people in Belfast, Ireland, had something to say to Hillary Clinton. Now, I remember seeing the photos from this. I didn't know where they were taken.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about this, where Hillary's walking around in like some fancy queen's robe, and there's like this...
Yeah, the child.
Yeah, some little shrimp is with a like creepy look on his face is behind her carrying the tail end of the robe so it doesn't hit the ground. Did you see this photo?
No, I'm gonna look it up right now.
The kid looked full of adrenochrome and ready for harvesting.
Oh, look at that little guy. What's this? This is creepy.
Yeah, he's just a really creepy. I mean, you know, when photos get taken, you don't get to really control what the look on your face is. So sometimes they can just catch you at a weird moment. Like if you freeze frame our video feed, you'll be able to catch us looking all kinds of weird. But this kid just happened to be caught with this really weird look on his face as he's trailing.
3-point hat on his head.
Yeah, trailing behind this evil woman walking through Belfast. And I've got some of the audio here. This is outside of...
She went there to accept the Queen's chancellorship.
What is that?
I don't know.
Some sort of anointing.
Her tweet about it says, "Just call me Madam Chancellor."
Oh. Well, here's what the crowd had to say. War criminal. I don't know if there's much more to it. But
no, that's pretty much it.
Nice.
Yeah, I couldn't have heard better words there.
Yeah, it's just her walking across the street, waving at people, and this little kid behind her carrying her robe.
But people are awake. People know. And we're not giving up. We're going to let her know everywhere she goes that she's...
You think her career is dead as far as, is she going to keep running for president, or is it over for Hillary Clinton?
I think she's done. She ran twice, and it was good, nice try to ride you your husband's coattails there.
Wasn't there some insider transcripts of conversations that took place between some of her high level advisors and stuff who were talking to each other saying, we can't keep her propped up much longer. She can't do this much.
Wasn't she crippled or something during the campaign?
Bad. There's something wrong with her, and
She's
they're not really
falling
talking about
over, fainting.
Mm-hmm.
She's not of good health. You can tell. Just like any, educated person with a small inclination of health in their repertoire, you could tell that this person is not healthy.
And isn't she just in her 60s or something? Or
I don't think she's that old.
Or is she up into her 70s at this point?
Either way, that's still not very old these days.
For a woman, 60s is still pretty young.
Yeah.
Even Bill isn't looking that good either. I feel like their energy is working against each other, and they're deteriorating quicker and quicker.
Actually, she's 73.
73.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Shocker.
But there's definitely something to be said for having your soul eaten away by being an evil person for your entire career.
If
never
she had one at all at any point in her existence.
Well, right, because she was a lawyer prior to her term in government.
Parasite.
So just being bad for the entirety of your adult life and ruining people's lives. It's amazing they can last as long as they do. Honestly.
Yeah, and I don't think she comes from a very underprivileged background at all.
I doubt that.
So,
yeah,
and the same with Bill. They're nutcases.
But they've completely destroyed places. I think they're brilliant. They're smart. But they're not good.
Right. No. You can be smart and evil.
Somebody somebody quoted Chelsea Clinton. It was about something horrible that was going on, like a flood, or and Chelsea Clinton responded to it in this totally innocent, let them have cake kind of way. Their view of the world is completely not realistic at all. They have no idea what reality even means.
Oh yeah, they can't relate. The average person. I remember the story about her fakely carrying around a bottle of Tabasco sauce in her purse to try to pretend like she was with it when she went to go visit some black people.
Are you serious?
You didn't hear about that story? That was years ago.
Oh my God, Chelsea.
That was years ago. No, Hillary.
Oh my
Hillary.
God.
Yeah,
and she's never driven a car.
What?
She has people drive her around.
Yeah.
She doesn't understand.
It's kind of like Kamala Harris. This is Kamala Harris said, "Oh, I used to listen to Snoop Dogg back in college." No, wasn't even around.
He wasn't around when you were in college. It's just a liar.
Yeah, they're just trying to
they try to relate.
Yeah, relate to the crowd that they think they're going to get votes from.
Right.
And I guess it's working.
They're
to
just,
a certain degree.
as you pointed out, sociopaths. They're psychopaths.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to meld into the group that they're talking to, and they will just lie if they have to.
Hey, fellow kids.
Yeah.
I got candy.
That said, the psychopaths and sociopaths in D.C., and you found this story tonight, Joa, the MORE Act has actually been moved ahead, apparently, by a House Judiciary Committee. They've advanced H.R. 3617, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act of 2021. What does it do? It will repeal the long-standing federal prohibition of marijuana by removing it from the Controlled Substances Act. That means it will be gone from the drug schedule. So right now, marijuana is a Schedule 1, quote, narcotic, meaning that according to the federal government, despite all of the state governments that have medical marijuana programs or have legalized cannabis for recreational reasons, they say Schedule 1 means that there's no accepted medical use for anything on Schedule 1.
Yet they have medical patients, and they've had them for years. It's only
there's only one left.
20. Yeah, there's only one or two left. Yeah,
you're talking about the federal cannabis program?
But it's ironic though that they never they didn't look at that and say, hey, we could change this.
The hypocrisy is just, to the max.
Oh, yeah.
But now they're actually looking at repealing the prohibition of marijuana, which would then end the existing state/federal conflict in cannabis policies and provide state governments with greater authority to regulate marijuana-related activities, including retail sales. This story from NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. I want to talk about what this could mean. Now, remember, it's just a bill, and that means it may fail. In fact, it has failed last year.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Microsoft is shutting down the Chinese version of its professional networking site LinkedIn. The platform for job seekers and employers was the last major U.S. social network operating in China. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more from San Francisco.
Microsoft is citing what it calls a challenging operating environment as a reason for shutting down the Chinese version of LinkedIn. According to the Wall Street Journal, earlier this year, Chinese regulators demanded that the platform be more strict in regulating content. LinkedIn later blocked the profiles of several human rights advocates, academics, and journalists, a move which led to criticism in the United States. LinkedIn had over 50 million users and offered, among other things, a way for Chinese businesses to connect with overseas customers. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose more than 500 points after a positive start to the third quarter earnings season. Investors also reacted to better than expected economic data in the U.S. FSN's Sarah Walton reports from New York.
The Dow rallied by 1.6% on Thursday, its biggest jump since March. The S&P and Nasdaq both rose by 1.7%. It comes after a bumper set of earnings results from several big banks and members of the S&P 500. Pharmacy chain Walgreens Boots Alliance rose about 9% after beating earnings expectations and announcing a takeover of primary care company Village MD. Bank of America went up by nearly 4% after also beating earnings predictions. And Moderna saw its share price increase by more than 3% after the US FDA recommended adults should get a half-dose booster shot of its COVID-19 vaccine. Figures for weekly jobless claims also came in lower than expected at 293,000. It's the first time it's fallen below 300,000 since the start of the pandemic.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration Advisory Panel has voted to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as for younger adults who are at high risk of severe illness. FSN's Carolyn Malone reports.
An FDA panel approved the Moderna request for a half-dose COVID booster to give people aged 65 and over and younger at-risk adults. Studies have shown the Moderna third dose would restore antibodies that drop off 6 months after the initial vaccines. Pfizer vaccine boosters are already approved for some people. First-dose vaccination rates have risen by more than 20% recently as a number of institutions, businesses and some states introduce vaccine mandates, even though federal rules to put mandates into effect are still being formalized. The White House COVID response coordinator said 77% of eligible Americans have now had at least one vaccine dose.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. The phones are open if you want to join us here. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. As here in New Hampshire, there have been multiple bills that have been put forward for the upcoming 2022 session to look at either decriminalizing marijuana even further or legalizing it entirely without necessarily putting regulations in place. So there is that possibility that's sitting out there right now where maybe New Hampshire will either be the state that has no regulatory control but just legalizes cannabis, or maybe they will have some regulations, but it'll be the lightest touch. Maybe there will be the lowest taxes, the lowest amount of regulations to try to encourage people to locate their cannabis businesses here in New Hampshire. I would say that either of those is a possibility here in New Hampshire, which is only the case because we have a migration of freedom-loving people who've come here and are working within the admittedly awful political system. I mean, it sucks to play politics.
It does.
It's hard to do. It's slow. It's frustrating. It doesn't pay much
at all. And the people who are doing it are absolute legends.
Some of them are amazing.
Liberty people who are doing it are, and it is not. Mark Warden's done it over and over and over again, and he'll tell you this is not easy on you.
No.
So that said, they get worn out. We need more people. Get them in. We need replacements. We need reinforcements. Come move to New Hampshire and get in the race. And
what we need to do is we need to have enough free staters to run both the Republican and the Democrat candidate in all of the elections.
So just eliminate the positions.
Well, I mean, eventually that would be nice
yeah.
if they could do that, but we do still need to. Unfortunately, until we can get enough people that just are willing to ignore the government, we do have to whittle it away. And and that's what they're working on doing. Now, I mentioned the different things. There's even a constitutional amendment that has been proposed for cannabis legalization in New Hampshire. So there's a bunch of different approaches that the state reps here are trying in 2022. But if this bill actually gets passed in D.C., the MORE Act, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, if this gets passed and they remove marijuana from the drug schedule, it's immediately legal in New Hampshire. Because as I understand it, now I'm not a lawyer, but this is my understanding, it was Weta Claus who told me this years ago, and he did the research on it. The way the New Hampshire drug laws are written, the New Hampshire drug prohibition adopts the federal list. So there's no separate list. There's no list in New Hampshire that says heroin's outlawed, marijuana's outlawed, methamphetamine's outlawed. That list doesn't exist. And New Hampshire's law just says, we prohibit whatever the federal government prohibits.
Boom, done.
So as soon as the federal government ends prohibition on cannabis, there's no more need for any of the legislation in New Hampshire. There's no more need.
Right.
Don't pass any. No, we don't want to legalize it. We don't want a regulatory structure. We don't want some bureaucrat telling people, oh, you got to get a license. No, we don't want licenses. We just want people to be able to grow a plant, harvest a plant, sell a plant, possess a plant, process a plant, do whatever they want with the damn plant.
Right.
So this could be an interesting, again, I'm not going to get my hopes up about the federal government here, but it's at least a nice indicator that the House, Judiciary Committee has advanced H.R. 3617. And this isn't the first time. In fact, the entire House, as we'll learn here in a moment, passed this last year, but it was the Senate that got in the way. So this might happen this time around. Quote, what this does is it ends the existing state-federal conflict in cannabis policies and provides state governments with greater authority to regulate marijuana-related activities, which is, of course, what NORML wants. That's the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. These guys aren't for no regulations. They want regulations.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they want controls, and we don't. Anyway, here's what they say. Quote, this is their political director. Never before has public support from every corner of the political spectrum been so aligned as to demand that Congress take action to end the shameful experiment with marijuana prohibition. The continued criminalization of marijuana by the federal government is an affront to our professed ideals of freedom, liberty, and justice. By advancing the MORE Act, the House will demonstrate that the majority of our political leaders, I don't consider them leaders, are ready to correct this injustice and enact cannabis policy reform that undoes the harms that have been inflicted upon millions of otherwise law-abiding citizens. They say now's the time for Speaker Pelosi and then some other politicians to schedule the MORE Act for a full floor vote. The bill was approved by the committee 26-15, with 24 Democrats joined by 2 Republicans voting yes and 15 Republicans sadly voting no. What the MORE Act does Its provisions remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act, thereby eliminating the existing conflict between state and federal marijuana laws and providing states with the authority to be the primary arbiters of cannabis policy within their jurisdictions. It would also make several other important changes to federal marijuana policy, including facilitating the expungement of low-level federal marijuana convictions and incentivizing state and local governments to take similar actions. I support that.
Yeah.
If you've got a conviction on your record, now it's only saying low level, so they, the dealers are still going to probably be sitting behind bars, but it's something. Creating pathways for ownership opportunities in the emerging regulated industry as well as other sectors of the economy for local and diversely reflective entrepreneurs who have been impacted under prohibition through the Small Business Administration grant eligibility. So they're talking about handing out monies to, politically connected people. Not exciting. But it's the federal government. Of course, they're gonna turn it from prohibition into connected. If you know us, we're gonna scratch your back, kind of help your buddies situation.
It's a mob.
Allowing veterans for the first time to obtain medical cannabis recommendations from their VA doctors. Okay, nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Removing the threat of deportation for immigrants accused of minor marijuana infractions or who are gainfully employed in the state legal cannabis industry. Fine with that. I'm all in favor of immigration and peaceful people working here. And finally, providing critical reinvestment grant opportunities for communities that have suffered disproportionate rates of marijuana-related enforcement action. So again, that sounds like political money handing.
Oh, yeah, that's distributing it back to the communities that have been affected the worst, supposedly.
Well, yeah, whatever that means.
We're all being affected by it.
According to the FBI, over 545,000 Americans were arrested for marijuana-related crimes in 2019, and over 90% of those were charged with mere possession. So there are still hundreds of thousands of our neighbors and friends.
Would you say 500,000?
545,000 Americans. According to a recent report by the ACLU, blacks are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis than white Americans. The state legal cannabis industry employs over 321,000 full-time workers. That's more than 6 times the number of jobs that the coal industry has. And so then they go through some polling numbers where overall Americans asked the question in April of this year by Quinnipiac University, do you think the use of marijuana should be made legal in the United States? 69% of Americans said yes. 25% said no. So that's pretty overwhelming. That's, that's a mandate. If I ever seen a mandate as far as what the politicians ought to be doing. Even 62% of Republicans said yes to that question. 32%.
Because they know that they're going to be farming it. Those Republicans will be farming it.
Yeah.
Most farmers are Democrats.
Is that right?
Yeah, because they get the corn subsidies.
Another question.
Democrats support those.
Back in November of 2020, they asked the same question, and 68% of Americans said yes. So, if anything, the numbers are going up. Which comes closer to your view about the use of marijuana by adults? 60% of Americans in April, according to a Pew Research Center study, said 60% said it should be legal for medicinal and recreational use. And so then they give you a little bit of history. What happened to this thing last year? On December 2020, members of the House of Representatives voted for the MORE Act back then by a margin of 228 to 164, so pretty overwhelmingly passed. But under the leadership of then Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the full Senate did not consider the legislation before the close of the congressional session. So they kicked the can down the road. They're trying it again this time around, and maybe it'll go through this time.
We'll see.
Don't knock until you try it. Come on.
Fingers crossed. Stay positive.
There's more coming up here. You can join us, and if this happens, then all of a sudden cannabis is legal in New Hampshire, and that would be pretty cool without any kind of regulatory structure.
At least peace on earth.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. More coming up. This is Free Talk Live. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Yeah, it's Free Talk Live. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're just talking about what it's going to mean for the not yet free state of New Hampshire, but the free-ish state of New Hampshire, if, and I should say when, because it seems like it's inevitable. It seems like it's going to finally happen, where the federal government is actually going to end cannabis prohibition at some point. Whether it happens this year, next year, or 5 more years from now, because government moves slow, they do seem to be making some progress, and what that's going to mean for New Hampshire, because as I understand, there is no list of prohibited substances in New Hampshire, which means that when New Hampshire secedes from the federal government, because that could happen sooner, right? Like if we secede next year, we actually might beat them to the punch at ending cannabis prohibition.
Great.
Then that would actually mean that there are no prohibited drugs.
Cocaine.
Oh my God.
And all the rest would be completely legal in New Hampshire upon seceding from the United States. So that's kind of an interesting detail. In fact, Matt, you were at an interesting event yesterday, and it did get covered to a large extent here on Free Talk Live because Bonnie and Nikki were both there with you. You guys all went together to the it was Concord's Technical Institute, I believe.
It was basically the police academy.
Yeah, they have that there, and they were having a executive committee meeting, which happens every 2 weeks in New Hampshire. And for listeners that don't know, New Hampshire has something New Hampshire's setup's a little different. I don't know how many states have the executive committee. It may be Vermont or something, one of the other New England states do. But a lot of states have like a state house, the state senate, a lieutenant governor, and a governor, right?
Yeah.
New Hampshire doesn't have a lieutenant governor. What New Hampshire has is what's called an executive committee. It's a 5-person committee. And the executive committee controls all spending over $10,000. Any contracts. So like, a union contract with the state police or whatever, right? Like if there's a proposal that's on the table of over $10,000, old Governor Sununu, he doesn't get to just wave his little pen and approve that. It's got to go through the executive committee. Now, I'm sure a lot of the time they just say yes, right? Because they're bureaucrats or politicians and, they're trying to do favors for people or whatever.
For status.
But in this case, yesterday, they said no to $27 million from the federal government. The federal government dangling this carrot
free money
in front of, there's going to be some strings attached to this so-called free money.
No, we don't want the feds here. Stay out.
Right. So, has this happened yet where a state says no to the federal COVID? This was $27 million for COVID awareness, for vaccination awareness, to pimp and to push vaccines onto people. And I'm sure other insidious things that we don't even know yet what they would have to do.
All these facets of control that they want their hands on that they can use, and they're not going to have it now because we're not going to take that money.
Sununu wanted it. He was upset. He put out a press release afterwards excoriating because it was actually the Republicans. So there's 4 Republicans on this executive council, and there's 1 Democrat. The Democrat voted for this. Sununu wanted the Republicans to vote for it too because he wants that money, and he's making it sound like, oh my God, these people don't care about your health, they don't care about the people of New Hampshire. But the reality is they did what the people of New Hampshire wanted them to do and rejected this.
We do care about your health, as in you get to save money. Keep that money in your pocket.
Well, unfortunately, the money's already been taken.
I know, but we're standing on principle, and the more times we stand on principle, this is going to be more to the effect of that. The money in your pocket's going to stay there.
Well, right. And this is a nullification.
Yes.
Okay, so we haven't seceded yet, but this is like a step in that direction.
Absolutely.
This is the
Big step.
This is the New Hampshire government doing something that they've done in the past. I mean, they did this with the federal money for seatbelts. They said, you know what? We'd rather have our freedom to choose. You can keep that $2 million or whatever. There's some number of millions that got put on the table and keeps getting put on the table, by the way. It keeps getting put forward to say, hey, come on, we got this money. You just got to pass a seatbelt law. New Hampshire has never passed the adult seatbelt law. It has never happened.
It's great.
And this is another example of that hardline stance of saying, you know what, we'd rather have the autonomy. Yeah, we know it's our money. You stole it from us. But we'd rather just have our autonomy than you giving us this $27 million, and then we're your little bitch boy.
Yep.
Yeah, like I never signed up for the IRS.
Right.
I only did the W-2 to get the job. Like, I need the job. But now it's like, you try to give me a check. I'm not biting. I'm not going to take that check. You can keep your check.
You talking about the letters they've been sending around to people?
Well, just in general, like trying to give back my tax dollars. No, I'm not going to beg for it back. I'm not going to sign up for your...
Yeah, I don't want your service.
I don't want it.
Yeah.
I'm still confused, though. There was a $27 million thing that got turned down yesterday, but I also heard the number $327 million. Is there a different thing that's $300 million?
I heard something about this $300 million. I've yet to see any evidence of it, I don't know what's going on with that.
I think it's worth keeping your eyes peeled, though.
Yeah, for sure.
They're shady
and they may
people.
try to sneak something under the cover of darkness.
Yeah.
But the good news is these activists in New Hampshire, they're watching.
Yeah,
like they're watching like hawks on these goons. I mean, this place was so full, you couldn't even get in the door, Matt, when you showed up. yesterday.
I did a great job. I'm going to pat myself on the back. I did a great job in that parking lot yesterday because there's a bunch of people who couldn't get in. So there's a lot of people standing outside. I made the rounds.
Nice.
I think there's probably 5 new people that are conservatives who now kind of get the idea of why cryptocurrency exists.
Sweet.
Oh,
figured it out.
They all have Edge wallets, and they all have $2 worth of Doge in their wallet.
Oh, who did that?
Matt Roach did it.
Yeah, and I heard that you and Bonnie and Nikki were passing out independence flyers, too.
Yeah, NHindependence.org flyers. We got a bunch of those
Love
out.
it. And positive responses, right?
Yeah. I ran into a couple of those Republic of people. Have you ever heard of the Republic of people? They're
Republic of what?
Republic of New York, Republic of New Hampshire,
Okay.
Republic of Texas. These are people, they tend to be older people, but they seem to be trying to refashion the United States. Again, they're electing their own presidents, their own senators, their own congresspeople.
Oh, yeah.
And they have their own congresses and things like that.
Their own courts, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so they're saying that the one that's currently there it's a hijacked version, and we're remaking it. It's like,
good for them.
Yeah. Okay. Can we not remake it again?
Let's just give up on it.
Yeah, it was a bad. The thing I don't like about revolutions is that people are like, there's a revolution. I don't want to do a revolution because we're going around in a circle.
Starting over.
I think you're talking about like the nation states thing.
Yeah. It's that kind of.
It's crazy because like a lot of them, they signed like this contract saying that being part of nation states and they can reclaim the government back, whatever. But they use like their own like blood to do fingerprints on these contracts.
Really?
Yeah, and the FBI ended up showing up to their houses, many of them. It was wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's how they know that they're over the target, though, and they may be right.
True.
So and even those people, I saw a few of those there, but it doesn't really matter because when you have decentralized currencies. And they are, especially if they're untrackable and you can actually have privacy in your transactions, it's all over. Mm-hmm. That's just a better product. And the number one tool that governments and banks use to control every single one of us is their dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We are tethered to the dollar. We are required to use it. We don't have other choices. Well, we do now.
I like the conveniences of the gold back, but I've really been telling people lately like the best currency out there is going to be bullets.
Traditionally, that's a historical rule. But it's funny. I left the mic here I left the studio just for a second because I ordered some Chinese food. And it came in. The guy who delivered the Chinese food, he said that he's coming up with his own
crypto.
Something. No, it's not going to be crypto. It's going to be a precious metals based thing. But
okay.
The guy from the Chinese delivery guy's got an idea, and he's going to do it. I told him to come join us on.
That's cool.
Sundays.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's going to be hard to top the gold back, though.
I know. I don't know if he knows. I don't know if he knows about it. He said
tip
that
him with a gold bag next time.
I should have tipped him with a gold bag. I didn't have one on me.
All right. Well, let me know.
I'll be ready.
Hey, by the way, Arya and Conan, we had to reschedule. It was going to happen last night. Now it's going to be this coming Tuesday. Conan had to work unexpectedly, and we're having to reschedule the Reaper encounter.
Oh, God, what's that?
So they are going to be eating progressively hot peppers, starting with a jalapeno, going easy street to start. Habanero to follow that.
Yikes.
Ghost peppers to follow that, and then what is supposedly the hottest pepper in the world, the Carolina Reaper. You will be able to watch them attempt to swallow and eat the Carolina Reaper this coming Tuesday, October 19th, starting at 10:30 Eastern Time. It's stupid, and it is going to entertain. So
where's this?
Video.freetalklive.com on our Odyssey channel. We will have it there. Video.freetalklive.com, October 19th, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. After our radio show ends, we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll do some crazy hot pepper internet-only
Sounds like
content.
Fun. Maybe I'll do it too.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Microsoft is shutting down the Chinese version of its professional networking site LinkedIn. The platform for job seekers and employers was the last major U.S. social network operating in China. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more from San Francisco.
Microsoft is citing what it calls a challenging operating environment as a reason for shutting down the Chinese version of LinkedIn. According to the Wall Street Journal, earlier this year, Chinese regulators demanded that the platform be more strict in regulating content. LinkedIn later blocked the profiles of several human rights advocates, academics, and journalists, a move which led to criticism in the United States. LinkedIn had over 50 million users and offered, among other things, a way for Chinese businesses to connect with overseas customers. Rachel Silverman, San Francisco.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose more than 500 points after a positive start to the third quarter earnings season. Investors also reacted to better than expected economic data in the U.S. FSN's Sarah Walton reports from New York.
The Dow rallied by 1.6% on Thursday, its biggest jump since March. The S&P and Nasdaq both rose by 1.7%. It comes after a bumper set of earnings results from several big banks and members of the S&P 500. Pharmacy chain Walgreens Boots Alliance rose about 9% after beating earnings expectations and announcing a takeover of primary care company Village MD. Bank of America went up by nearly 4% after also beating earnings predictions. And Moderna saw its share price increase by more than 3% after the US FDA recommended adults should get a half-dose booster shot of its COVID-19 vaccine. Figures for weekly jobless claims also came in lower than expected at 293,000. It's the first time it's fallen below 300,000 since the start of the pandemic.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration Advisory Panel has voted to recommend a Moderna booster vaccine for people 65 and older, as well as for younger adults who are at high risk of severe illness. FSN's Carolyn Malone reports.
An FDA panel approved the Moderna request for a half-dose COVID booster to give people aged 65 and over and younger at-risk adults. Studies have shown the Moderna third dose would restore antibodies that drop off 6 months after the initial vaccines. Pfizer vaccine boosters are already approved for some people. First-dose vaccination rates have risen by more than 20% recently as a number of institutions, businesses and some states introduce vaccine mandates, even though federal rules to put mandates into effect are still being formalized. The White House COVID response coordinator said 77% of eligible Americans have now had at least one vaccine dose.
Hollywood's biggest stars are rallying for a good cause this week with the Save Our Children campaign. Celebs like Jessica Simpson, Brad Pitt, and Gwyneth Paltrow headlined a charity event to help their suffering kids who desperately need a chance to live a normal life. Angelina Jolie talked to Starfix about the charity, saying, quote, "You don't have to be a mother to want to help my children, many of whom are not getting a proper education. If you look at the numbers, 1 in 5 of my children will struggle with drug problems." Joining us now is a representative from the charity, Julie Harrison. Julie, it was such a great cause.
Absolutely.
Julie, we're talking about children who don't have any positive role models. They're born into a life they didn't ask for, and if the state's not going to step up and help these kids, it's time someone did something.
Here's a quote from Victoria Beckham, and I found this powerful. It breaks my heart to think about these kids living somewhere in my house with no hope for a happy future. Who knows if they even have food to eat? Julie, according to your group's website, a staggering number of STARS children are being exploited growing up without parents.
Right.
This is the Onion News Network.
The latest episode of Declare Your Independence is next, here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM.
It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Ernest Hancock and Mr. John Brakey. Mr. John Brakey is Mr. John Brakey. You know, we've known each other a long time working on election fraud, and you got to get your terminology right. It's not voter fraud, it's election fraud. You know, this has been going on for a long time. John and I have been doing now. Oh, I didn't tell you. I got a call from Dr. Shiva yesterday or day before yesterday, okay? And he wanted to know, who's this Helen Purcell? I'm like, well, let me tell you a story, you know? So this is, we'll get into that. But John Brakey is a co-founder of Audit USA, America's United for Democracy, Integrity, and Transparency in Elections, and Special Task Force Leader for Citizens Oversight for Verifiable Elections. You can find out all his goodies at auditelectionsusa.org and electionnightmares.com. auditaz.blogspot.com. Well, that's all the main things. But main one, electionnightmares.com. I'll give you nightmares. Okay, so let's go ahead, and what we're going to talk about is Maricopa County's audit. Yes, I've been paying attention. Yes, I've done some interviews. Yes, I know that